Can you put it on the bed?
Yeah, sure.
And I know we get to
Yes, fast service.
Yeah.
Are you going to
Please, could we ask speakers to mute because we're getting background noise from them?
I'll mute everybody. Okay, Chairman, you can begin. Sorry, you need to unmute yourself. No, can't hear you.
Then.
There you
Right,
go.
what about now? Are we on?
Yeah, you're fine.
Yes. I have to struggle with the separate switch on my headphone, which has to be moved every time you mute me. So anyway, welcome everybody to the planning meeting. Carried on from the last meeting last week. And again, apologies for those speakers, particularly who were hanging around and we didn't get to the applications they were involved with. And you've had to come out again tonight to get it sorted. So hopefully we can get through everything tonight and it'll all be hunky-dory. So let's crack on with the meeting tonight then. I think, Louise, you're going to give us apologies, aren't you?
Yes, Chairman, that we've received no apologies for tonight.
Have we not? Full house. Thank you. Declarations of interest. We had them before. I'm not going to go through.
If there are any extra interests that you need to declare tonight for the members who
Understand,
weren't
thank you,
present
Louise.
last time.
Yes. So what I'm going to say is we gave everything last night and we gave a lowdown of how we now want it to happen. So let me just refresh your memories that if you have any possible diverse interests on any application, please let us know and then tell us what you're going to do about it. So it's all down to you to decide what your merits and thoughts are and to declare whatever it is you think you need to declare. And if you need any advice, then Jamie's here ready to give you that should you need it. So we'll start with then a declaration of interest. Robin, I can see your hand. Robin? Robin?
Robin, you need to unmute.
Robin, unmute yourself.
Councillor Underwood, you're on mute.
Yes, okay. Sorry, Chairman. Yes, I need to declare another interest in 20/01196 full, which is the Earthingborough one. I know of John Sidey, and at one time we were both Rotarians. So that's
Okay.
my reason.
Thank you. Councillor Lee Wilkes, you had a hand up.
Thank you, Chairman. So clearly, as you said, we made the announcements last time, but since the last planning application and this one, I consider to get correspondence from various members of the public on applications. But as last time, Chairman, I still come in to this with an open mind.
Fine, thank you. Anyone else? I can't see anyone. Jill,
Yeah,
can you see anyone?
there's me,
Who's that?
Jeff Shatlock.
Jeff.
Yeah, I just to clarify that the Bennyfield Road Glapthorne and the Bluefields Farm Apethorpe, I won't take part in either of those.
No, okay, that's the same as last time, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yeah, but I just want to clarify it.
Okay, thank you. Are there any others, or is that the lot? Councillor Pentland, are you declaring an interest?
No, thank you, Chair. It was declared
Okay.
last time, so
Yeah,
we'll carry
fine.
over.
Okay, then that's great. Right. I can't see any other chat room messages coming up. So,
Councillor Barbara Jenny needs to declare an official site visit.
I'd also like to declare an interest that I have received some correspondence from speakers tonight, but I am approaching the meeting with an open mind. But I do also need to declare an unofficial site visit.
Right. Thank you, Barbara. I'm just reading the other messages. I can't see anyone else. So we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the... Sorry, I suppose I ought to identify site visits separately. Anyone done any site visits?
Yeah.
Barbara?
Yes, please. I did a drive past of the petrol station site, which is application 20/00937 ADV and 01464 ADV.
Did you speak to anyone?
No, I didn't stop the car.
Okay, fine, thank you. Any other site visits? No? Right. Next item on the agenda is the planning applications for tonight, which start with the Glapthorne one, 242.
Chairman,
Sorry, 12.
the East Northants Resource Management.
Sorry, who's that?
Jill Mercer. The first item is the East Northants Resource Management at Kingscliff. We didn't do that last time. And that's the next one down on the agenda from last time.
Kingscliff?
Yes. The waste site there.
Sure, it's
Is
the
it-
third application on the list.
It's page 92, isn't it?
Yes.
That is
Yeah.
correct.
92,
Yeah.
Kingscliff. Yes, I've got that one down. I wasn't going to change the order tonight. We'll leave that one where it is in the agenda.
Yeah, that's the first item though, Chairman.
Ah, we missed that one out. I get what you're saying. So yes, you're right. Let's start with that one, the Kingscliff one, which is 01447. And I haven't got the officer. Which officer is handling this one?
It's Gavin.
Gavin.
Chairman.
Okay,
So,
Gavin, can you introduce it, please?
Certainly can. Thank you very much, and good evening, all. I'll just share the screen with you, and we will get going. Right. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Excellent. Right. The first thing to say is this isn't an application. Rather unusually, it's a pre-application consultation from Augean South Limited, who operate the East Northants Resource Management Facility, which is a hazardous waste landfill for low-level radioactive waste and treatment at the Kingscliff Quarry. So, apologies for that. So, this is the location plan. So the current landfill facility is just here, and Augean are proposing to do two things. One is to extend the life of the existing landfill, and secondly is to extend the landfill and waste treatment facility onto the land to the west. To do that, they will need a development consent order, which is effectively a planning permission granted by the Secretary of State, and they currently operate the existing landfill under their existing development consent order. So in the future, they will prepare an application to be heard by the Secretary of State via the Planning Inspectorate and at a public examination in the future. And as part of that process, they must do pre-application consultation. So they've done a pre-application consultation with a number of consultees and local people, and included within that is East Northants Council. So this is an opportunity for this council to consider Augean's proposal and make its views known to Augean, and for Augean to take those forwards when submitting its application for a development consent order. So next slide. This is the aerial photograph of the current landfill and waste treatment site, which is being worked at the moment, and that is the land on which they would extend the landfill onto if they got a development consent order to do that. In the report that's in front of you, the recommendation is, because this falls outside the jurisdiction of East Northants Council and the County Council and is quite highly technical in nature, it's that we focus our attention on the sort of long-term lasting effects of this, which is really what happens in the future once the quarry and landfilling has been completed and the land restored, which is its permanent state in the future. So the current approved restored landform is a domed landform, and it increases in height up to about 92 metres above ordnance datum. So it's a domed landform, and that's currently approved. The proposed landform is again a domed landform, and it's proposed to plant trees and to return the land to sort of public amenity and sort of biodiversity enhancement land. These are sections through the proposed restored landform. So you'll see here there are various cross sections, AA, BB and CC, and you'll see on AA that it's proposed to restore the land to this kind of landform, which reaches about 95 to 100 metres above ordnance datum, so quite a significant increase. The same with section BB, which is through here, and the same with section CC, which is again raising the land quite considerably. So that's why in the report we say that we as a council should focus on the long-term visual impact of this proposed restored landform and its visibility. This slide shows the zone of theoretical visibility. So effectively all of the blue land, if you were stood on it, you would theoretically see that domed restored landform, which is much higher than the ground level at the moment. And through discussions with Orgy and ASL have offered to undertake photo montages from 3 viewpoints, viewpoint 3, 5 and 9, of what the restored landform would look like in the future once the landfill is completed. That's something they propose to do in the future, because at the moment all we have in considering the effect visually are these photographs which show only the extent of the restored landform, not the actual appearance of it in the future. And this is a viewpoint 3 from a footpath just on the edge of fine shade wood. Similarly, viewpoint 5 simply shows the extent of the restored landform, not what it would look like. So the recommendation to ASL, and as I said, it's not a planning application, so there isn't conditions, there isn't reasons for anything. It's simply a recommendation to ASL that we understand the justification for raising the land levels to ensure that the land is restored, but also that we welcome their commitment to provide photo montages showing what it would look like from those 3 viewpoints, but that they should consider what other evidence or montages they could provide to show that the landform wouldn't be visible from any other viewpoint. So that is the recommendation that we suggest we give back to ASL and their pre-application consultation, and that is the end of the presentation. So it's back to you, Chairman.
Thank you, Gavin. That's very clear. Right, so I've asked Councillor Andy Mercer to handle this one for the membership, as we don't have the ward member here tonight. Andy, can you take us through it, please?
Certainly, Chairman. But first, are there any public speakers that should have been speaking on this one? I don't know. I'm just
no, Chairman, no speakers.
Okay.
Yes, there's no speakers on this one.
Okay, right. My concern with this one is that when we say long term, normally we're talking about 20 to 50 year time frame. With this, we're talking about the 200 to 500 year time frame, which is rather longer term than we normally look at. I was concerned previously about the potential for penetration of the capping layer and subsequent escape of radioactive isotopes. We've been given a description in the update sheet of the proposed capping procedure, and my concern is that the developers are saying that they will make sure that the the trees that are planted there are shallow rooted ones that will not penetrate the capping layer. The problem is that the longer a piece of land has trees or shrubs on it, the more diverse the vegetation there becomes, and the more other species migrate to it and start growing there. You can't say that in 200 years' time what the mix of trees growing on this domed land will be. It won't necessarily be what's been planted there. And my concern is that we can't therefore control the degree of penetration by the roots of whatever ends up there 300-400 years from now, which may well penetrate the capping layer, unless the capping layer is made stronger than what they're proposing. Effectively, they're proposing a capping layer that's a deterrent for roots, coupled with a plastic impermeable layer to try and prevent water diffusing through it and taking away some of the unpleasant stuff that's in the pit. However, if you have a different type of arboreal culture there, you can't be so sure what's going to be there, particularly with global warming, which is going to change the mix of trees that are growing in this part of the world. So my suggestion is that we add a clause to our reply to the consultation, asking that the applicant does some sort of analysis to determine what trees will be growing there in 200 years' time, given that we're expecting global warming to change the average temperature in this area and therefore the average mix of trees. You'll find different trees with different root characteristics living in this location in, say, 2350, and we would like to know that whatever's going to be there at that time will also not penetrate the capping layer. Does that sound reasonable, Mr. Sylvester?
It does sound very reasonable. Let's just have an answer, Gavin, can we, to that one first?
Certainly. Well, as Councillor Mercer said, the applicant has already answered this concern that has been raised, and they are satisfied that the amount of soil is sufficient that deep-rooted trees won't penetrate it. But as this is a reply to a pre-application consultation, it is up to you to decide what other additional points you would wish us to raise directly with ASL. So there is no reason why that point cannot be raised, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Gavin. Right, next hand up I see is Councillor Jill Mercer.
Thank you, Chairman. I wonder if I could ask the officer, this 1.5 metres that they say for the extra thickness where trees are to be planted, that doesn't really seem quite enough to me. I would have thought that they might have to consider more thickness of restoration soil in those points. The other thing that concerns me is the fact that basically you're taking a flat landscape and making a hill or several hills. That is really changing the scenery considerably, and 3 photo montages of what it looks like I don't really consider to be sufficient. I would like to see more, but also I just don't know why they have to go so high. It just seems to be an overkill, whether they need to go so high. I presume that's in order to bury things deep below the surface, but I'm just concerned that it's really changing the scenery. And that's I'm finished, but the other Councillor Mercer would like to come back.
Yes, I got that, thank you. Gavin, would you like to comment on Councillor Jill Mercer's points?
Again, in terms of the thickness of the soil beneath where the trees would be planted, in the update sheet it does say that the environmental permit that would be needed, so this would be regulated by the Environment Agency in terms of the capping layer and the specification for all of those sort of technical items, I suppose, as to how this is constructed. they say that would be regulated through the permit, and they maintain that that would be a sufficient thickness. I mean, I'm no expert in minerals and waste, so it's not something that I'm able to give any expert advice on. But there is I think a sensible explanation given by Augean. But if we have concerns based on that explanation, this is our opportunity to raise those with Augean and ask them to be considered through their application for a development consent order. And in time, of course, if they do submit their application to the planning inspectorate to be heard at examination, it'll be up to the North Northants Council to consider the application and participate in that process and raise whatever concerns it thinks are necessary. So there is that process going forwards. Again, in terms of why the landform is to be raised to the height that is proposed, there is an explanation in the report. I was just trying to find the exact reference number. I think it's paragraph 4.5, which is the explanation for the domed profile, and it's based on a number of factors that is trying to cast water away, so water doesn't leach into the soil and into the landfill is one thing that I picked up from that paragraph, as well as making efficient use of the area for the waste void as well. So there seems to be a number of reasons as to why it is the height that it is, and they are in paragraph 4.5 of the report. But again, if we do have additional concerns, now is the time to raise them with Augean. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Gavin. Andy, you've got another point. I've got
Yes,
you, Dave.
Gavin has touched upon the point I was going to make. The pit will be covered with an impermeable membrane to prevent water leaching through and taking the nasty stuff out to the outside world. But that means effectively the area is equivalent to a piece of land that you have tarmacked or put concrete on. And that in turn means that no longer absorbs rainfall. So you create a surface water runoff, which in turn is something that the local lead flood authority should be consulted on and model to see whether it increases the risk of flooding nearby.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hughes.
Thank you. Just checking. I noticed in 417 it refers vaguely to the objections of people. It's a shame that we're not privy to the fact that there might be a lot of people who live in the. After all, we're concerned not with the technical aspects in a way, but with the personal aspects, because we represent the people, and there's not much there for us to sort of support, as it were, from the people objecting, because it's all very well this runoff and this water and so on. The kids go and play there. Some of that water may well be contaminated. Any membrane is not going to last 200 years, so it just doesn't happen like that. So eventually, in years to come, that land will become polluted, and I think it's obviously the local residents must be very concerned about that. And I think it's a shame that we're not asked to comment on what the residents have to say, rather than on these technical issues, which, after all, we're in the hands of the experts rather than ourselves.
Thank you, Councillor. Anyone else want to make any comments? I can't see anyone in the chat room or hands up, so it's back to Councillor Andy Mercer for a proposal, please.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'd like to add those extra comments that have been raised by members to our response to Augean. Could I ask Mr. Sylvester to read out what the consolidated list will be, please?
Yes, certainly, Councillor. So number one is an analysis of the trees that will be growing on the land in about 200 years' time. The other one on the list is explanation again about the domed profile, the thickness of the soil beneath it, whether that is adequate at 1 metre to 1.5 metres thick. Third point is the need for additional montages over and above the additional 3, which I think is already captured the recommendation in terms of, is the 3 sufficient? What information, evidence can they provide to show that this won't be visible from other locations. So I think that is all 4 of them, if I'm counting correctly.
Yeah, I think you're right.
There's
You
one
okay?
other, to check with the local lead flood authority about the risk of causing additional surface water flooding, surface flooding. Yeah.
Can I raise a point about that, Chair?
Yeah, of course.
Because the lead local flood authority are already a consultee to Augean, and we have to remember this is Augean asking for the views of various consultees, it will mean that Augean themselves have already asked for the views of the lead local flood authority. So it really shouldn't be for ENC to do that directly. So if we could change that to ENC asking Augean to make sure that they take account of the lead local flood authority's advice, I think that'd be more appropriate.
I'm happy with that, yes.
Okay, thank you. Dudley, have you got another point?
Yes, I think we should say something that we note the concerns of local residents over the potential health and safety effect of this. Because if, as I've said, the water runs off, the children go and play, that's going to be very contaminated.
Yes,
Not next year.
We remember what you said, Dudley. Gavin, is there any point in that, do you think?
I think, with all respect, general points about health and safety will be raised by many others other than this council, and I think will be paramount, I would have thought, when it comes to the planning inspectorate considering an application and that application being examined in public. So I think we can take that as a given that those kind of general,
that's where the public will have their
generalities in a
say.
negative way,
Yeah.
but generalities, I think they'll be considered.
Thank you, Gavin.
Sure.
Anyone else got any points? No. Councillor Mercer, a proposal, please.
I'd like to propose that we put forward the comments that have been read out by Mr. Sylvester.
Fine. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Underwood seconds it. All those in favour of that proposal say aye.
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 Those against that proposal say no. Those abstaining, tell me. None. That's carried. Thank you. Let's move on to the next one. Let me see if I can get them in the right order now. So we're now into Glapthorne on page 105. This is 1242. And Jennifer, you're going to talk about this one, aren't you?
I am, thank you. Good evening. Let me just share my screen. Can you see that, members?
Yes, we can.
Lovely, thank you. So the detailed officer's report is taken as read and there are no updates to report. So I'll summarise the key points of this application. Number 1, Raisby Lane is a detached dwelling with a double garage to the rear of the property, located on a cul-de-sac at the edge of Clapthorne and is surrounded by residential properties. The proposal itself is for the first floor or partial conversion of an existing double garage to create a habitable space within the roof. The conversion itself includes the raising of the roof of the garage, and I have denoted it on this drawing, excuse the wiggly line. So that's the existing roof, and this will be the raised roof. So the roof itself will be raised by 1.36 metres. It also includes the addition of 2 dormer windows to the frontage and 2 velux on the rear slope. The room created in the roof will be used as a home office with the ground floor retained as garaging. The office is actually proposed to be accessed by an external staircase on the eastern edge of the garage, and officers have asked for a bamboo screen to be put around the landing at the top of the staircase to prevent any sort of overlooking or perception of overlooking from the stairwell. The garage itself is detached and is visible from the public realm. I've got a photograph here showing this from the street. So this is the garage we're talking to. If you can see my you can see my cursor. So it will slightly alter the appearance of the garage with the addition of the dormer windows on this front slope here, and the external staircase, which will be to this boundary here. The garage doors will be retained and the ground floor will still be used as garaging. The staircase will be sited close to this boundary, and would be relatively well screened. It will still have the appearance of a domestic ancillary building and will be in keeping with the surrounding area. The site itself is surrounded by neighbouring properties, and concern has been expressed from a number of residences about the increase in the height of the garage, the external staircase and potential overlooking from the roof lights to the rear. Concern overlooking loss of privacy and an overbearing impact. Properties to the south on Main Street, I'll just flick back to my location plan, sorry, here. So these properties here are some 35 metres from the garage block, which is here on my cursor. And as such, it's considered that the increase in height by 1.36 metres is not considered to have a detrimental impact on these properties. The two roof lights would be angled within the roof slope and so would look skywards and wouldn't increase any direct overlooking or loss of privacy. To the east, the properties here on Southwick Road are approximately 15 metres from the garage block. And as I said, amender plans have been submitted to include a bamboo screen at a height of 1.7 metres around the top of the stairwell. This would prevent anyone standing directly on that landing area and overlooking these rear gardens. So due to the limited increase in height of the garage, the distance separations involved and the proposed screening to the staircase, the relationship to neighbouring properties is considered acceptable. The proposal wouldn't result in any loss of any parking, and the officer's recommendation is for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Again, we don't have a ward member here with us tonight, so I've asked Jill.
Chairman, we have two speakers on this.
Yes, I understand that. So I've asked Jill Mercer to take the matter from the member's point of view. And as Jill has just said, there are two speakers on this one. The first is Mr. Grossman, who is an objector. Are you there, Mr. Grossman?
If you could press *6.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can.
Oh, jolly good. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. You wanted to go ahead?
Yes, please.
Okay. We just wanted to take a little bit of issue with a couple of points that have been raised in the report, which seems to some extent slightly pejorative to the concerns of the people living around there. It talks about a slight increase in the height of the garage. Well, the increase is about 20 to 25%. So, you know, if you had a 5 foot person with someone standing next to them who was 25% tall, they'd be 6'2", and that wouldn't be a slight increase. It's a fairly sizable increase as far as we can see. With regards to the dormer windows at the front, the report tells that due to the angle of the dormers, that there wouldn't be any direct overlooking. In fact, the angle is about about 45 degrees or so, and any of us looking out of our windows at an angle of 45 degrees can quite easily see everything around them, as well as what is totally perpendicular to the windows. I've stood in the back gardens, and believe me, it is an overbearing building already. It totally dominates the view over the gentleman's fence. Another 4 to 5 feet is going to be added to it, and those windows will be looking directly into the bedroom of the elderly and disabled gentleman who lives there. Also, the windows on the south side are going to be dormer windows. Notwithstanding the sill height, it'll be perfectly easy for anyone standing there to look through them and see into the house on the south side. The report mentions that due to the angle of the openings, that no direct overlooking would occur. Well, you know, whether you're looking at something which is on a vertical plane or whether it's angled over, you can see just as clearly. You can see the roof quite clearly through the trees that are there, which means that from that building you'll be able to see anything that's out. It's straight into the kitchen of the building at the bottom of it. And lastly, the residents who live around it are not in favour of this. The the parish council are not in favour of it, and I would have thought that the concerns of the people in the village should be the deciding factor in this. And that's about all I've got to say about it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your comments. We have a second speaker, who is Mr. N. Rees, who is the applicant. Are you there, Mr. Rees?
Hello, can you?
Fine. Speak away. Yes, we can hear you.
Me? Oh, good evening. Good evening. Thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to say that before I start, I was sensitive to the needs of others and consulted with all the neighbours who have a direct view of the garage that can be seen, that isn't behind a 6-metre Leylandii hedge. The requirement for the garage modification was due to the global pandemic, which has required an unforeseen change in my working practices. And whilst it's a private road, it can be viewed from the neighbours and any pedestrians that happen to walk in. I can use laptops elsewhere in the house, and they're possible for occasional use, but that's very difficult for extended periods of time. During lockdown, I've had to share my study with my wife preparing for a PhD and a postgraduate son preparing job applications. So going forward, the patterns of work have now changed permanently. Working from home on a flexible level is going to be the norm, and there's no actually return date to go back to my offices currently. So it's also an encouraging factor for reducing greenhouse gases through unnecessary commuting and travel. So I planned a sort of a minimum impact, low-key changes using existing materials with windows identical to those in the existing house. I've no desire to change the use of the garage, and it will be continued to be used as a garage and a workshop, parking 2 vehicles. An internal staircase would preclude having a sort of keeping it as a garage and a workshop, and a spiral staircase would be inappropriate, which was proposed because of my wife has got mobility issues. She had an accident many years ago. To the south is Mr. Grossman's property. I didn't engage with him prior to submission on my plan, as his boundary with my property is a continuous screen of 6-metre Leylandii hedge, which is the height of the current garage apex. I've been both in his kitchen and in his garden, and I struggle to actually find the rear of my garage, and I can't see it. I can't see my garage or my house unless you're within about 1 metre of the boundary. The modification will increase the roof height by a modest amount and add 2 Velux windows to the south and not to the north, as Mr. Grossman said. The 2 Velux windows, the base height of the Velux windows will be at my eye height, and it will be over my wife's head, and they'll be looking upwards into the tree canopy above them.
Sorry to interrupt, you have 30 seconds before we have to stop you.
Yeah. The windows on the north side will not be looking into anyone's property directly at all, and they can't actually see into anyone's house, and they're looking at the back of my own property. So it's a sort of a sympathetic development of an existing garage with very low impact to the surrounding neighbours, many of them have been in support of the proposed development.
Right, thank you very much. That's great. So those are the speakers for this. We'll go back to Councillor Jill Mercer, who's going to introduce the application to us.
Thank you very much, Chair. As you've heard from the officer about the what's actually proposed here, I understand the need for this, but really we're just looking at the effect of it, rather than that it's helping someone's business. Although we understand that the windows on the back of this garage, Velux, and gentleman just said about the height of them. Normally, I would have said the Velux windows should be, and you wouldn't really be able to see out of them because you're sort of looking up into the trees. So I do take that point, and the dormer windows don't seem to be overlooking either. The parish council did object on the grounds of overlooking, and their objection was the Velux windows and the external staircase. Now, not much was said earlier on about the external staircase, by either of the speakers. I thought that was probably the most contentious part, but it wasn't actually mentioned. The officer did say that to the top of the staircase, they persuaded them to put a screen so that it wouldn't overlook the other properties. I think if you have been to any of the maisonettes, certainly I have delivering leaflets, you find that there's a staircase up the side of the building and you get a view of everybody else's garden. So I wouldn't have thought it was that unusual for the amount of overlooking. The officer said that they think that that is reasonable. The amount of what effect on the neighbours, and that is the main issue. I'd just be grateful for other members to comment.
Anyone else wish to speak? I can't see anyone else. Jeff, sorry, Councillor Shatlock.
Yeah, my concern really was the staircase on this one, actually, to be honest.
Sorry, Jeff, weren't you absenting yourself from this one?
No, I was going to lead on it originally, but this isn't the one I was. It's the Benefield Road Lapthorn that I'm not going to take part in.
This one you're prepared to take part in? Okay.
Yes. Yeah, no, my concern was always the staircase and the fact that people could dwell on the landing of the staircase and overlook. But I'm just pleased to see that it has been conditioned that this bamboo screening is there, and I think that's very important. It does stay there. That's all I've got to say.
Thank you, Jeff. Anyone else? I can't see any chat saying anyone wants to speak. So you're all happy? We'll go back to Jill then for a proposal.
Mr. Chairman, I don't think there's any grounds to object to this application, so I would propose that we grant.
Can I have a seconder, please?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Jeff. So that's proposed and seconded. We accept that application, approve of it. All those in favour of that proposal say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Anyone against? Say nay. Anyone abstaining? Then that's also carried. Thank you very much. Right, over to page 2. We now move to Starbucks in John Clark Way, Rushton. It is 00937. And I think, Amy, this is your application, isn't it?
It is indeed. Thank you. I'll just share my screen. Okay, can you all see that okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. This is a retrospective application for advertisement consent for signage in relation to the Starbucks site at the junction of John Clark Way and the A6. No other matters are for consideration tonight, other than those relating to the proposed signage, and the report is taken as read. The key concern with this proposal appears to be the impact of the 9-metre high illuminated totem sign, which is positioned at the adjacent to the access point and across the road to the rear of a number of dwellings on Tyne Way. I'll just show you those. You can see those where my cursor is here. You'll see on the so there's a distance of approximately 52 metres between the sign and the dwellings, and the totem is positioned so that it faces away from those closest dwellings. You'll see on the update sheet that I've given members some suggested wording for a condition, which has been put together by Mandy Dennis, our Senior Environmental Protection Officer, to ensure that the illumination for the totem sign does not exceed 600 CDMS during the hours of darkness. This is a recognised level of luminance for the signs of this size and proximity to sensitive buildings, and that's set by the Institute of Lighting Professionals. No exact luminance figures have been submitted for the totem sign, but it is estimated that the current luminance level of the totem sign is around 300 CDMS. However, such a condition should only be used if it's a requirement in order to prevent light disturbance. In this case, your officers would advise that the signage, particularly for the totem sign, would not result in any harm. The recommendation remains as set out in my report, subject to the recommended conditions and possibly the additional Lux condition noted on the update sheet if members see fit to include it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Amy. Right, I think, Barbara, this one's yours, isn't it? It's your ward, Barbara.
It is, Chairman, but we have 2 speakers, I believe.
Sorry, yes, you're right. Maybe even 2 or 3. Sorry, the first speaker is Councillor Dorothy Maxwell. Dorothy, can you hear us? Councillor Maxwell, we can't hear you. Have you done *6 on your phone? Councillor Maxwell. Councillor Maxwell, we can't hear you. Perhaps we should go on to the second speaker and try and get Councillor Maxwell afterwards. Louise, can you see if there's a problem with Councillor Maxwell?
Yeah, we'll do.
Let's go to the second speaker then, who is Councillor Paul Harley of Rushden Town Council.
Sorry, Councillor. It looks like Councillor Maxwell's now available.
Okay, well, let's have Councillor Maxwell on first, as per order, and then Councillor Harley, if you could follow afterwards, please. Dorothy, give us your words.
Yeah, sorry, thank you. Good evening, Chair, Councillors, Officers and Residents. I'm Councillor Dorothy Maxwell, and I'd like to address the following serious concerns regarding how this application could affect the residents who live opposite in 3-storey houses. The petrol station has 3 takeaways and this Starbucks totem pole. The illuminated sign on the Starbucks totem pole was not agreed to, and the question is why the developers believe it's acceptable just to put them up without any consideration for the residents who live opposite. It is now like Blackpool illumination, with the rest of the lights as they are on 24/7. The totem pole relating to Starbucks is too tall. It's taller than the petrol sign, which is unacceptable in this area, and it adds to light pollution, along with the canopy, which has bright green lights. This has to be questioned. Starbucks shuts at 8 p.m. and opens at 7 a.m. The lights left on during the night, and I was wondering if the developer's agent would consider asking the owners if they would like to turn them off. I realise this would be seen as a goodwill gesture, but they may not live here to see the impact of light pollution. Equally, the owners could also consider turning off the lights around the canopy during the night time. In Shoesmith's report in 2016 regarding Bridge Service Station in Higham Road, it stated in Section 70 of the Town and Country Planning Act 1990 that residents should have 7 hours sleep. I feel if these lights were to be turned off between 8 p.m. and 7 a.m. and imposing the same conditions that apply to Asda petrol station in Higham Road, paragraph 123 of the MPPS states consideration must be given to adverse impact on health and quality of life, and you can impose such conditions if you feel fit, which is relevant to the policy. I ask if we could reduce the totem pole, turn off the lights between 8 p.m. and 6 a.m. in the interest of residents' quality of life, as it would help the residents get a night's sleep. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Councillor Maxwell. So please now on to Councillor Paul Harley representing Rushden Town Council. Paul? We can't hear you yet, Paul.
Hello?
Paul, we can hear you now. Fine. Crack on.
Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Rushden Town Council objects to the 2 9-metre illuminated totem poles. We consider the totem poles to be overbearing and unnecessarily high. 9 metres is excessive, and we question whether this would create serious light pollution to the 3-storey homes directly opposite the site of John Clark Way. We consider 6-metre poles will be perfectly adequate, less overbearing, and offer less risk of light pollution to neighbouring residential properties. Thank you.
Okay, that was short and sweet. Thank you, Councillor. Right, we'll now go to the ward member, who's Councillor Barbara Jenny. Barbara, will you talk on this application, please?
Yes, certainly. Thank you, Chairman. Well, the issue of the signage on both these sites, well, one site, but 2 separate applications, I raised in September last year as it was being installed with no planning application being submitted. Hence the reason it's been brought to this committee. Apart from being a retrospective application, it took from September until enforcement stepped in November for an application to be received. When we considered the application for the site, we considered this as one site, albeit with a mix of uses, the petrol station, cafe shop and the drive-through. With regard to the advertising signage, we are now considering 2 separate applications, one for Starbucks drive-through and a separate one for the Euro garage, which includes the petrol station plus the cafe shop. This means 2 sets of signage, which in my view makes the site very busy. With the time it has taken to bring the 2 applications in front of us for consideration, the petrol station has now opened. The cynical amongst us may view that as a deliberate step, but we do now have the benefit of seeing what the effect of the lighting around the site has on the surrounding area. With regard to Starbucks, which is the first application, there are 17 signs, of which 11 are illuminated. These relate to the drive-through element of the site and are mostly directional signs at fairly low level, and they are contained within the site itself. My main concern in calling the application in was the totem at the roadside as having the greatest impact on residents. As we've heard, this has a fairly low level of lux, if it is 300, and the environmental officer, as we've just heard, has recommended that the maximum level should be 600. The question was raised regarding the lux levels, whether this could be reduced at certain times to minimise the impact, and I do welcome the addition of the condition to limit the level during the hours of darkness. I have driven past the site and could see for myself the level of illumination, and subject to the additional condition, I do not feel the totem pole does necessarily represent undue impact on local residents. On the opposite side of the road, there are some tall lamp standards, and they are between the petrol station and the residents. There does seem to be too much signage in my view. Along with the real issue that I can see is the lamp standards within the site itself, which are those that are shining on the forecourt. They seem to have the brightest element to me, but as they were part of the original planning application, I doubt whether there is anything we can do about that.
You're correct. We've already covered that.
Yeah. So it is a question of the cumulative impact of all the signage that we've got, the 2 totem poles. Which do you go with? The Starbucks one, which is a fairly modest one, or another one which we are to consider in the next application?
Barbara, let's forget the next application. We're just looking at the one for the Starbucks.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Chairman, but cumulative impact is a consideration, but I will pass over to members for their view before I continue.
Thank you. Councillor Jill Mercer.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't know if it's just me, but at 7.3 it says the advert is designing the well-known Starbucks corporate branding. I don't know if anyone's seen that in the pack. Can you see it? I was not driving. I did drive up there. It was just before it opened, and to me that just looks like a mermaid. I couldn't have said that that was Starbucks. I had no idea what it meant. So I don't really feel it adds an awful lot to the site. It also says at 7.8 the totem is attractive in design. That is subjective. I did feel that driving up the road, it was the brightest and the tallest element, and I did feel that it was rather intrusive. Whether that is sufficient to turn it down, I don't know, but I do think that certainly that condition, so that it reduces the light, is a good one. I also would, if I don't think we can actually insist on it being turned off at night, but if the owners were to do that, I'm sure that would be very welcome. I think that particular sign, because the other one's obviously in the other application anyway, it just seems to stand out and it doesn't seem to do any good. And if it's closed at night, I don't really see the point of it at night. I mean, it's saying here's a Starbucks, but it is not saying come in and buy because it's not open. So I would have welcomed the officer telling us whether it is at all possible to ask for it to be turned off at night, but I would certainly encourage it to be turned down in the condition, on the condition.
Thank you, Councillor Mercer. Councillor Hughes.
Sorry, Chairman, is it possible to get an answer from the officer on that one first?
Sorry, who's that?
Just wonder whether Amy could answer about the possibility of it being turned off at night.
Yeah, it's something that is a possibility, but I think it would be unreasonable to ask them to do that, or to make them do that if there isn't any identifiable harm. And where we are at the moment, the view is that it wouldn't have an impact on residential amenity. And as I've set out in my report, I don't think the visual impact is significant, certainly not enough to to insist that the light is turned off. We could put an informative on the application to ask the operator to reduce the hours that the light is on, but obviously that would just be asking them to rather than making them. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Sorry, Councillor Hughes again.
Well, thank you. I concur with Councillor Mercer. We tell people what hours they can operate. I don't see why we're supposed to be environmentally friendly, not spending a lot of generating a lot of electricity we don't need, and all the rest of it. And then they have all these lights on all night when they're shut. I mean, if it was they were open, I could understand it. But the lights on all night, I can see you need minimum lighting for security and all the rest of it. It would not seem unreasonable to me to demand that they turn the light off at the hours when they're shut and to keep the lighting on the rest of the site to a minimum security level.
Thank you. As you heard, Amy's going to ask them nicely.
No, I think that's wrong. I have to say.
But that's all. I'm sorry, in planning terms, that's all we can do. Let's move on. Councillor Andy Mercer.
Thank you, Chair. The illumination we're talking about is a lollipop type. It shines out two sides. Do we have any way of constraining them to prevent them rotating it in the future so that the main illumination goes towards the housing opposite instead of down the street? If we don't have any such control at the moment, could we put in a condition requiring the lights to be kept at a particular orientation so that they don't rotate it?
Amy, do you have a thought on that?
Yeah, we haven't got any sort of specific conditions of that nature at the moment, but the approved plans will show the sign facing the way it is now. But I mean, if members were sure that they want, that was a significant concern, then I don't think it would be unreasonable to put a condition on to say that it had to stay in that orientation.
Well, can I request that then, please? Because if the lighting is rotated, it will make a huge difference to the impact on the neighbours. So I would strongly recommend that condition.
Okay, Amy. Now we move to Councillor Lee Wilkes.
Thank you, Chairman. So firstly, let me just voice my displeasure at these retrospective applications. Retrospective, in my view, is just an applicant doing what they want, and if they get into trouble, they put planning application in. By the by, but it just drives me crazy. So from what I can see, Chairman, there has to be some consideration for the neighbours, because next to this site there is a great big warehouse. And when that warehouse was built, no doubt there were conditions placed upon it as to the type of lights that they could have. And those conditions were right, because of course what you don't want is neighbours looking out of their bedroom windows 3 stories high and seeing an illuminated building. So we have to consider that when we're looking at this particular application anyway. So I have 3 questions really, if I can, of officers. Firstly, have we had any photos in from what this looks like, because clearly it's built, what it looks like from neighbouring properties, because that would give everybody a visual indicator as to actually, how bright it is. Second question is, do we know what the typical height of a Starbucks sign is in other sites that border residential areas? Because clearly this is the height of this one is really very high. So what does Starbucks normally do when it's bordering residential? And the last question is, has there been any communication with the developers about reducing the height of this from, we heard from one of the speakers, from 9 metres to 6. Has there been any discussions with them?
Amy, do you have any thoughts on any of those 3 questions?
I do, yeah. With regards to the photographs, I don't have any of my own from sort of windows or anything, partly because of sort of COVID restrictions. We're trying to, to not enter houses unnecessarily. Obviously, if the neighbours were concerned, then they could have submitted their own, which we don't have. The typical height of a totem sign is 9 metres. I have had discussions with them, perhaps reducing the height, but I think it's very much a standard setup, whether that be for a site that's in residential areas or not. I know of several of these sites, and they're all very, very similar. So one of them, you know, as an example, in Northampton is very close to residential properties, and you know, has a sort of a similar totem sign there. So it's not unusual for this type of site, this type of sign in a residential area. And I think, just to add to that, you've only got to look at your nearest high street to see illuminated signage opposite under residential accommodation. So it's not something that's unusual.
Thank you, Chairman. If I can just come back on that. So that's interesting to hear, because of course it's easy for us to sit on the screen and look at the application and think, crikey, that looks bright for neighbouring properties, and we are trying to consider what it looks like for the neighbours. But I ask about the photos because we don't really seem to have had any comments or objections from neighbours. So I just wondered if any of them had sent a photo in just to say, this is what it looks like, please argue on my behalf. But so thank you for that.
Thank you. Next, we have our legal officer wishes to have words with you. Jamie.
Thank you, Chairman. Through you. It is just a slight point I'd like to be clear, because obviously it's a public meeting, that there is no detriment for retrospective applications. I appreciate that there might be some frustration felt, but it's not a material consideration. The planning regime is one of regulatory, not punitive. So there is no material negative considerations against a retrospective application, because they are trying to regularize the position now. I appreciate that it can appear to be frustrating to members, but it is a key point that it's not material consideration, that it's retrospective. Second point, very quickly, Chairman, if I can, as your officer said, and I appreciate it's a difficult one, luminosity and how bright something is, and as ever with these matters, you'll appreciate that guidance is helpful in assisting members as to what isn't acceptable in planning terms, etc. And as the planning officer has made comment, there is guidance of that with the suggestion of the additional condition. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. I agree with you also. Councillor Wilkes, is that you again? No?
The Chairman, no, that was just me agreeing with what the legal officer has said.
Oh, I see what you're saying, yes.
Yeah.
Because I can't always see the notes here. It's covered by another note coming in. Right. Anyone else wish to make comments before we go back for a proposal? Councillor Andy Mercer.
Thank you, Chair. Just one point, and that is that when we're considering the impact on amenity, if the illumination were there first, then it gets a buy. If the housing is there first, then the illumination has to be acceptable to the residents of the housing's rights. In a high street, the illumination is invariably there first. So any flats that are built there are built on the assumption that they're going to be in an environment where there's already neon lights. If you were to build the flats first and then add the neon lights afterwards, it would be different. This is a case of adding the lights afterwards.
Thank you, Councillor. Right, Barbara, you've heard the comments from your colleagues. Can I ask you for a proposal, please?
Yes, thank you. Can I just ask before I make the proposal? We have only actually discussed one sign,
that's the separate applications. We must talk about this application on its own.
There are actually 17 signs to be considered in this application. The only one we have actually discussed is the number one, the totem pole at the access site. I would just like a clarification that if we dislike one, do we refuse all the signage, or can we approve the other 16 signs and disagree with one, the totem?
Amy, do you have an answer there?
I think we need to look at the application as a whole, as it's put in front of us. Is there? I mean, it does appear that there is that one that is the concern, but I would encourage members to to take that application as as a whole.
Thank you, Amy. Councillor Hughes, you're mute.
Trying to be good. If this application was deferred, there could be some negotiation about hours and heights and so on before it's approved.
I think we have the application in front of us in black and white. And in terms of the hours, you mean the hours of the lights?
Yes.
Yes. I think Barbara Jenny is going to make a proposal. Anne, you've got a question. Annie, you've got an answer?
Can we hear from the officer?
Yeah, Annie?
Amy.
I do apologise.
I think I think we need to also be clear on what if we are sort of, I know we haven't made a decision yet, but if we do move towards an approval, then we need to be clear on what we're asking for to be as a condition and what we need to ask, to do as an informative. So just bear that in mind. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
I think
Then,
we have another officer wishing to.
Caroline, have you got a point to make?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just wanted to advise the members that I believe it's possible to do a split decision on an advertisement consent. So that may be something that you wish to consider.
Barbara?
Yes, thank you for that. That is helpful. I think I don't see an issue with the other signage, apart from that one totem pole at the roadside. So I'd be prepared to recommend grant for the remaining signage, but sign number 1, the main totem, I would ask that is deferred to see whether the applicant is willing to turn the lighting off when the shop is closed. I'd also like the addition of the condition regarding the lux level and the informative. Oh no, well, the informative was to turn the light off. So
Thank you.
yeah.
Jamie, do you have a comment to make upon that?
Thank you, Chairman. I think it's probably worth just clarifying with the officer, because my understanding is from comments made that discussions had occurred about that point. I may have got that bit wrong, so I'd just like clarification as to whether the discussions have been held, because if they had, then it appears to me that the information is before the committee to make the decision, because there's nothing else to ask because it has been asked.
Yeah, I got you. Thank you, Jamie. Annie, what about that? Amy?
Yes, it has been discussed. We've discussed reducing the height of the sign and also the hours. I think there would be some mileage in asking them to restrict the hours that they illuminate the sign, but in terms of the height, I think they would sort of stick as it is at 9 meters for the totem.
Okay, thank you, Annie. So, Barbara, it's back to you again.
Well, I feel we have to, well, I will recommend that we grant in line with the officer's recommendation, subject to the condition regarding the maximum illumination of the sign and a condition that restricts the reorientation of the Starbucks sign.
Yeah.
And the addition of the informative that the sign, if possible, can be turned off when the business is not open.
You got it. You got it. Can I have a seconder for that, please?
Seconded.
Councillor Andy Mercer seconds it. All those in favour of that application say aye.
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 Anyone against it say nay. Any abstainers? Then that's carried too. Thank you. So we move on to the next one. Which is on page 120, which is on the same site, 1464. I don't know whether, Amy, you want to make another proposal on this site as well, do you? Yes, you do. Thank you. Amy?
Yes, I would like to, if that's okay.
Of course it is.
Thank you. So yeah, this is also a retrospective application for signage in association with the new petrol station and associated Sainsbury's and Greggs store. Again, members are only asked to consider matters that relate to the impact of the signage, as opposed to principle. With this proposal, the main concern appears to be with the illuminated totem sign. The Euro Garages one is situated near to the access, and the BP one is near to the roundabout. Our environmental protection team has assessed the impact and no objection is raised, although members may wish to add the same lux condition as suggested for the Starbucks signage. The applicant has confirmed that both of the totems are illuminated to a maximum of 300 CDMS. All of the other signs are small and, as you would expect to see on a service station site. I recommend that the application is approved subject to the conditions in my report and on the update sheet with regards to the condition. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Amy. Barbara, you again, please.
Yeah, I think you have a speaker, Chairman.
I do apologise, yes. I keep forgetting those tonight, don't I? I think we've got, oh yes, just the one speaker, Councillor Dorothy Maxwell. Are you there, Dorothy? We're waiting again. Dorothy? *6, Dorothy. Can you hear me, Dorothy? I can hear someone blowing their nose. Dorothy? Are you there, Councillor Maxwell? If we can't get you, we'll have to move on. Louise, can you help?
Yeah, just bear with me. I'm just trying to contact. Oh, she's back. She's here.
Oh,
Councillor Maxwell, you kept us waiting again.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Right, okay. Well,
you've got 1 minute.
1 minute?
We waited 2 minutes for you.
Oh, well, I'm sorry about that. Well, the thing is,
again,
what I would like to say is you have to go up and see this petrol station physically. It's no good sort of having a look from it from a, on a monitor. On top of that, the residents have not been consulted about the actual illumination. But I would like to reiterate that this illumination on this site is totally unacceptable. The green lights around the canopy, the actual lights on the canopy itself, the actual going into the station. And the fact is, Shoesmith's solicitor's report clearly state that the residents are entitled to 7 hours sleep. What I'm requesting is that these lights either be turned off or reduced in illumination because of pollution, light pollution, between 8 p.m. and 7 p.m. in the morning, so that the residents have a quality of life. It's not about us, it's about them. It's about we have to look after them. These 3-bedroom houses were built before the garage, not after, before. And if we're able to do it down Higham Road as the garage, why can't we do it here? So what I'm asking for is to see whether either the lights be reduced in power or turned off during the night to give the residents a night's sleep? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Maxwell. That's the only speaker on this topic. So, Barbara, please, it's back to you.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Well, my comments really apply here to, as I've just made. We do need to consider the cumulative effect of these lights. The BP sign at the roundabout is very bright, it's very large. They are now asking for the Euro garage to have another totem on the opposite side of the access to the Starbucks sign. There seems an awful lot. The main issue when I drove past, as far as I can tell, is yes, the signage is very bright, but the biggest illumination comes from the lamp standards around the forecourt. If there is any way, and I welcome the condition to reduce the level of light to the maximum laid out by the environmental officer, then that will obviously help. But I feel that the comments I made earlier are still relevant, so I will throw it over to members for their comments.
Thank you, Barbara. Councillor Jill Mercer, please.
Thank you. Well, I just wonder whether the officers could answer whether the campaign for darker skies have been consulted. They're very vociferous on many of our applications, and the overall site with the accumulation of all of those signs is very bright. So that is one consideration. I drove past, I didn't think the totem was as much of a problem as some of the other sites, because the bit that's illuminated is really just a strip down one side. The BP sign is brighter, but that's for sort of near the roundabout. So again, it's not quite so bad as the other one we were talking about. But the lights on the building itself are all bright, and it stands. It's like a Alicia beacon. It just sort of stands out. So I would certainly want to see all of the lights dimmed at night, and you know, if we could also put an informative on this one to say, could they consider turning any off when that part of the business is closed, then I would be in favour of that.
Okay, thank you, Jill. Councillor, is it Andy Mercer?
So could I have an answer to the campaign for dark skies?
Sorry, is that Amy? No, it's not. It's Jill, isn't it?
I was asking Amy a question.
Yeah, happy to answer. We haven't had a formal response from the campaign for dark skies. We didn't actually consult them because it's not necessary. However, I did call them just to double check whether they would want to comment, and it would be below the threshold of the applications that they would normally comment on. With regards to the lights on the building itself, they have all been approved, so there's no scope as part of this application to reduce that.
Thank you. Okay. Anyone else wish to speak?
Yes, please, Chairman.
Councillor Lee Wilkes.
Thank you, Chairman. Just mine's a quick question to the officer. Councillor Maxwell, when she was speaking on this, just unless I misheard, referenced a letter from Shoesmith Solicitors. What is that? And I can't find that in my pack. Did I mishear, or is there something I'm supposed to be referring to?
Amy?
Yeah, I think Councillor Maxwell is referring to a letter that was written with regards to the application on Higham Road for the Asda petrol station. So it isn't a piece of correspondence that's relevant to the consideration here.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank
That would explain why I can't find it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilkes. Anyone else wish to speak? Then, Barbara, please, a proposal.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, in view of the fact that we are obviously not able to do anything about the level of lighting in the petrol station itself, we are just considering the 2 totem poles, then I feel we have no alternative but to grant in line with the officer advice, but with the addition of the condition that the lux levels are kept within the suggested level.
Yeah.
Chairman, could I just ask a question? We have got 13 signs. Is it that the others are not illuminated?
Do you know, Amy?
Yeah, there are. The numbering on this one was a little mixed up when the application was submitted. So there are, although it looks like there are more signs than there are, that's just to do with the numbering rather than the actual number proposed.
Thank you.
But are any of the others illuminated?
There are several that are illuminated, but they're much smaller. They're sort of directional signs when you get around the sort of the side of the property or at the
they're
front.
directional signs on the property, aren't they?
They're smaller.
Right.
Okay, so we've had a proposal to accept the
Chairman, you've got muted.
We can't hear you, Chairman.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Who moots me? Right, so we've had a proposal. I'm now looking for a seconder. Who's willing to second it, please?
I'll second it.
Councillor Smith, thank you very much. So it's proposed and seconded that we accept the officer advice with the conditions the member put forward. All those in favour say aye.
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 Those against say nay. Those abstentions say no. Then that's carried. Thank you. So the next one is at the bottom of page 2, which is Rushton Lakes. The proposal number I can't see, but Dean, are you with us this evening?
Chair, Dean's not here this evening. It's Carolyn. So
Sorry,
I'm
Carolyn,
this
you're
one on
taking
his
it, aren't
behalf.
you?
Yeah.
Can you give us the input, please?
Yes. Okay. This application is for a revised link road to run between Ditchford Lane and Rushden Lakes. Some members will recall that the council has approved a link road twice previously. Firstly, as the original link road application, which was approved in February 2019, and secondly as part of the Rushden Living Scheme, which was approved in September 2020. The proposal is principally the same as the 2 previous approvals in that it goes between the same places, Ditchford Lane and Rushden Lakes, and includes improvements to the A45 Ditchford interchange. The site area is larger though, as can be seen on the site plan. There is now a large area to the south of the proposed road, which would be used for the temporary storage of material associated with the earthworks from the development. This slide shows the layout at the A45 Ditchford interchange and entrance to the new link road. This is almost identical to what has been approved previously. You can see here that the 2-lane section of the slip road will be increased in length, and there are crossing points and footpath links towards Rushden and along the east side of Ditchford Lane at the top of this plan. This slide shows the new junction with the new right turn lane on Ditchford Lane. For traffic leaving Rushden Lakes and using the link road, there is a left and right turn lane. In terms of pedestrian and cycle links, there will be a refuge to allow people to cross Ditchford Lane to head toward Wellingborough, as well as a shared foot and cycle way along the east side of Ditchford Lane. The large is at the Risdon Lakes end, where it is much better than before. The road now flows directly into Risdon Lakes,
Carolyn, we
separates
lost you
surface
there for a
access.
few seconds. Can you go back a bit, because we lost you for a while?
If you can go back just about 2 minutes, please, Carolyn. We had a blank from you.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Have you seen this slide?
Yes, you can. And
was
and
only
your
an
light's back on, so you're okay again.
So
Right.
if I go from here.
Yep, sure.
Okay, so this slide shows the new junction with the new right turn lane on Ditchford Lane. And for traffic leaving Risdon Lakes and using the link road, there is a left and right turn lane. In terms of pedestrian and cycle links, there will be a refuge to allow people to cross Ditchford Lane to head toward Wellingborough, as well as a shared foot and cycleway along the east side of Ditchford Lane at the top of this plan. The largest change to the layout when compared with previous approvals is at the Risdon Lakes end, where it is much better than before. The road now flows directly into Risdon Lakes, separates service access for the leisure building from customer traffic, and improves the pedestrian connectivity between the Garden Square and leisure building. For the first time, there is also now a pedestrian link to the petrol station / hotel site. This slide shows the approach to Risdon Lakes in more detail and shows where the bus stops would be, where the crossings are, as well as the footpath link to the neighbouring hotel and petrol station site. Besides layout, the main change to earlier approvals is that Natural England are more concerned about the impact upon the SPA. They have objected on the basis that SPA is not performing as well as previously thought, and they are concerned about the impact of additional recreational activity as a result of this proposal. As a result, we have engaged an independent consultant to appraise the application from an ecological perspective. They have concluded that the proposal can be made to be acceptable in planning terms, subject to 2 additional conditions, which are noted in the officer report at paragraph 6.31. We've undertaken additional consultation with Natural England, and although they have acknowledged receipt of the consultation, they have not responded within the last 30 days. Following the last member briefing session, the recommendation had been amended on the update sheet to allow for 3 options. These were option 1, to delegate authority to the Head of Planning Services to grant planning permission subject to a satisfactory resolution of ecology concerns. Option 2 was that if marginal concerns were raised by Natural England, to decide whether or not to bring it back to committee. And option 3 was that if substantial concerns were raised by Natural England, to bring the application back to committee. Natural England haven't responded, and therefore we're satisfied that the additional mitigation can be secured by the conditions as per option 1, and therefore the recommendation is now to approve the application based on the option 1 scenario and to discount options 2 and 3. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn. We have 2 speakers on this. The first is Councillor Paul Harley from Rushton Town Council. Are you there, Paul?
Hello.
Oh yeah, crack on.
Rushton Town Council are supportive of the revised scheme to construct a new link road between Ditchford Road and Risdon Lakes, together with junction works, car parking, footpaths, cycleways and lighting. We are pleased to see the provision of additional parking, as parking has been problematic since Risdon Lakes first opened. We hope the additional road will ease congestion on the roundabout on the A45 adjacent to Waitrose. Whilst we are pleased to see that the provision has been made for a pedestrian cycle route, we would like to see the 2 current options for a link to the existing greenway included in the plans. The connectivity of the greenway through Stannick Lakes, Risdon Lakes, and then on to Wellingborough is very important, and we request that careful consideration needs to be given to the 2 current options for linking to the existing greenway. We would also like to endorse Irchester Town Council's concerns about pedestrians crossing Ditchford Lane and their request of an island crossing allowing pedestrians safe across the road. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the second speaker is Mr. Will Goody. Sorry, is it Oddy? Can't read the writing. Oddy, Mr. Will Oddy, who is a supporter. Are you there, Mr. Roddy?
Hi, can you hear me all?
Good.
Yeah,
Crack on. Yes, we can.
Excellent. Hi, yes. My name's Will Oddy. I'm a senior development manager at the Crown Estate. As some of you may be aware, we own and operate the Rushton Lakes Retail Park, having taken it on from the original developer, LXB. We have subsequently purchased the land to the west of Rushton Lakes, where this link road application is located. As explained in your officer's committee report, the application before you is for a revision to the already consented link road. We are seeking to make a number of improvements to the previously approved design, which include the provision of a more effective transition between the link road and its interface with Rushton Lakes. This will include improved pedestrian and cycle routes, as well as an enhanced soft landscaping proposal to create a better visual experience. This will also include improvements to the environment for any new greenway route which passes along the link road. Better traffic circulation along the link road with a much more direct route into the existing Rushton Lakes car park. Provision of a separate servicing access to the leisure building to remove servicing vehicles from the main Rushton Lakes car park. And finally, 39 additional car parking spaces. The revised proposals include exactly the same off-site highways improvements as previously approved schemes. These include the road widening enhancement to Ditchwood interchange, as well as the provision of a 3-metre wide foot and cycleway along the Ditchwood Road itself. We also note the council's own independent ecologist has concluded that with the inclusion of additional planning conditions, which we are happy to accept, there will be no adverse effect on the integrity of the Ditchwood Reserve and SPA as a result of implementing the link road scheme. Overall, we welcome your officer's recommendation to grant planning permission. The proposed link road will aid the operation of Rushton Lakes by providing an alternative access and taking vehicular movements away from the Skew Bridge roundabout. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Roddy. Right, we'll now move to Councillor Andy Mercer, who is going to put this forward on behalf of the ward.
Thank you, Chairman. Before I make personal comments, could I ask the officer if they would like to respond to the comments from Rushton Town Council? Because I'd like to hear a professional response to them before I comment.
Carolyn, can you do that?
Thank you, Chair. Regarding the Greenway, I'm not actually sure on the answer to that question. So I've not been involved with this application, so Paul might be able to come back on that point. With regard to the islands being added, from what I can see on the plans, there are crossing points. If I just share my screen again, bear with me. There are crossing points on the new junction there. I believe that's what the speaker said in his presentation.
Okay. Right, that hopefully answers that. So, Councillor Mercer.
Yeah, well, I think this is a vast improvement on what we've got now, and there is already a consented scheme. So you have to have very strong reasons for refusing something like this, because there is a fallback position which is not greatly dissimilar. Since this is an improvement, I can't personally see reasons for refusing it, and the recommendation on the update sheet seems to me to be sensible, namely that if we do get concerns raised by Natural England at some point, then it's dealt with by Chair, Vice Chair and Ward Member to consult with the Head of Planning Services. I presume that's what the officers are still recommending. Can I just check that, please, before I go further, that the update sheet is still up to date?
Yes, that's today's update, yeah.
Okay,
thank you. Well, in that case, then I have no problem with recommending that, but obviously I'd like to hear what other members have to say.
Of course. Councillor Jill Mercer.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to raise one slight query with that as far as Chairman, Vice Chairman, etc., because obviously this council is coming to an end very shortly. So I'd just like the officers to perhaps have a little think about that, of what would happen if that takes too long. I just, it's an vast improvement, and I'm very pleased with the changes to the Rushton Lakes End, and didn't have any problem with the other ones before anyway. I just want two small points. On crime prevention, could I just check with the officers? I wasn't quite sure whether it was conditioned about the access to it at night, whether there is access control. That's one point. Also, I'm very pleased that there's the footpath to the petrol station and hotel. I'm not quite clear whether that is lit or not for security purposes. Thirdly, it's mentioned at 6.27 about the provision of electrical charging. I wasn't clear whether there were going to be any more electric charging points. So, the Rushton Lakes have been very good at having charging points in the original application after we requested that. So they're just three small points I'd like clarified.
Thank you. Carolyn, would you like to answer those points?
Yes, just bear with me one moment. I'm just reading through condition 15, which is the crime prevention condition. I believe it covers all of the points raised by Northamptonshire Police in their comments. And then regarding the lighting, I think there's also a condition in the report for a lighting scheme. Condition 17 refers to lighting. And then you mentioned paragraph 6.27, bear with me.
Electric charging points.
That's right. I don't know if they're on the layout, to be honest. I'd have to check the plan and get back to you on that, but I can put a note on for the officer to check that and make sure that they're added.
I'm happy with it anyway, but obviously, if there was extra electric charging points, it would be quite an advantage.
Okay.
Thank you, Carolyn. If you could give a message to Councillor Mercer to the effect where the charging points are, if any more, that will solve that. Right, next, Councillor Hughes.
Thank you. I'm pleased to support the scheme, which is, as others say, a much improved scheme. However, I'm also conscious that we must do everything we can to protect the SPA, because these are very precious things, and there aren't many of these SPAs in the country, and we're lucky to have two along the Nene Valley. So I do hope that there'll be careful monitoring that can see the construction is going to go to page 147. The construction is going to take place between October to March, and the noise control and dust control measures are going to be strict, because obviously masses of dust going over those lakes will make a great deleterious effect upon the bird life. So providing that's done, that's okay. But please, can we make sure that does actually happen, and those construction dates are not just drifted on further and nobody bothers.
Thank you. Carolyn, do you have a comment on that?
Thank you, Chair. Just that all of those matters are conditioned in the report. Also, just wanted to come back on a point that Councillor Mercer made about the decision being delegated to Chair, Vice Chair and Ward Member, and obviously East Northants coming to an end. The recommendation in the committee report is to delegate to the Head of Planning Services, just because the wording of the two additional conditions is to be agreed with an ecologist rather than Chair, Vice Chair and Ward Member. So just wanted to clarify that point. So if members do decide they can delegate to Chair, Vice Chair and Ward Member, but it's our preference that it's just delegated to Head of Planning.
Thank you, Carolyn.
Can I come back on that, Chairman? There is provision in the interim arrangements for between the 31st of March and the 10th of May. In fact, for planning meetings to take place if absolutely necessary. And I don't think that is desired because of PERDA. But such things as this, like agreeing conditions, I think could still be done during that period. So I would just encourage, you know, say that Chair and Vice Chair could still do it during that period if it comes back during that time.
Thank you, Councillor. Andy, I think it's back to you.
Well, thank you, Chair. A few points. First one is that the Planning Committee, redesignated an interim area planning committee, will still exist between 1st of April and 10th of May, but I don't think we'll have a head of planning services at East Northants at that time, which is a bit awkward. So the chair, vice chair and ward member will still exist, but the head of planning services won't. So that's an awkward one. If we delegated it to the head of planning services to issue the decision notice, must be some other way if we get to that point of transferring it to some officer. That's the first point. The second is that condition 17 requires the lighting management arrangements agreed in condition 15 to be fully implemented. I would like to add an extra sentence to that saying, and thereafter maintained in perpetuity. Is that okay with the officers?
Carolyn, what do you reckon?
Yeah, that's fine. I can add that word in. Yeah.
Thank you. Perpetuity.
Yeah. With that additional wording to the condition, I'm happy to recommend that we grant this as per the officer recommendation in the update sheet.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder for that proposal, please?
Seconded, Chair.
Councillor Robinson. Sorry, Councillor Underwood. Wrong one. Councillor Underwood seconds it. So that's proposed and seconded. Those in favour of the proposal say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Anyone against the proposal say nay. Any abstainers? Then that's carried also. Thank you. So we're on the last page now, and we've got 10 minutes left. So the next one, at the top of page 3, is Rushton Memorial Clinic. And I think, Peter Bache, it's yours, isn't it?
Yeah, the next two are mine.
Introduce it, please.
Yeah, and they both hopefully should be pretty quick because they're only variations. So yeah, members are only deciding on I think about 2 or 3 very specific things because the application has obviously been approved previously. Let me just share the screen quick.
If you can just remind us what the things are that we
will do. So
look at for this tonight.
You know the site. There's the Rushton Memorial Clinic site plan there. There's the location. So plan permission was granted in August 2020 for the conversion of the conversion and extension of the former Memorial Clinic to create 14 1- and 2-bedroom flats for occupation by people over the age of 55. This application has been submitted to vary condition number 2, which is the approved plans. The 3 things that are being varied are the relocation of the bin storage area. The bin storage area was just here, it's now being moved to there. So that's number 1. Number 2 was to construct a brick wall to the front pedestrian gate. So where my mouse is hovering now, a brick wall either side, just a small one to allow pedestrian gate entrance just there. And number 3 even is the installation of an electric gate set back sufficiently to not impact on highway safety. Every other aspect remains as approved previously. So they're the 3 points. In this instance, the variation of the plans to allow for the reposition of the bin store, additional parking spaces, the brick wall and the electric gate are considered to not cause any harm that would outweigh the benefits of the proposal. Therefore, the recommendation is one of approval as per section 10 of the officer report.
Thank you, Peter. We have one speaker on this topic tonight, and that's, guess who, Councillor Dorothy Maxwell.
Right.
Are you there, Dorothy? Councillor Maxwell. Councillor Maxwell.
And she turns the phone off. It's starting on time.
Louise, can you help us?
Yeah, I'm just trying to contact her.
Thank you.
Can you?
She's just joined.
Can you hear me? Hello.
Yes.
Is that you, Councillor Maxwell?
It is indeed.
Finally, again.
Thank
you. Can you give us your 3 minutes, please?
Yes, certainly. Good evening, Chair, councillors and officers and residents. I'm Councillor Dorothy Maxwell, and on behalf of the residents who live in Spencer Ward, we would like to submit the further concerns in relation to the relocation of the storage bins. We see that the bin storage will be moved, leaving the bin lorry a very tight turn. Besides this, it would also remove some of the landscaping scheme, which the tree officer has taken great pains to plan the garden to match the building. It would be sad to see this excellent design be reduced, since all the trees were removed. Secondly, would each resident have their own bin? Our concerns are that these industrial bins are difficult to access due to the heavy bin lid and the height. And lastly, could all the parking spaces have electric charging points? On behalf of the residents, thank you for listening.
Thank you, Dorothy.
Thank you.
Dorothy's the only speaker tonight, so we'll now move to the ward member. So I'm just looking at the notes to make sure I caught up with everything, and that's Councillor Andy Mercer.
Hello, Chair. Looks like I'm speaking as often as Dorothy tonight. This application, in my opinion, is an improvement on the previous one that's been consented. I looked very carefully at the swept path analysis for the refuse collection lorry that empties the bins, and it's no better, no worse than previously. It's still got to do the same 3-point turn, but it's no significant difference, perhaps slightly better than before. Having the electric gate is probably an improvement in terms of security, providing that is that the refuse lorry has a mechanism for opening it and closing it. I'm not quite sure how that's going to operate, but that is a matter for the operators of the site to organise. That's not a matter for planning, as far as I'm aware. The brick walls at the front, once again, seem to me to be an improvement. So all in all three of the changes are, in my opinion, improvements to the existing application, and I can't see granted application, that is, I can't see any reason to turn this application down.
Thank you. Anyone else got any comments on that? Or are you happy with what Councillor Gillian Mercer?
It's only the fact of the refuse vehicles actually being able to enter the site. Could we just have clarification from the officer if that's going to be a problem at all?
No, I think, yeah, Councillor Andy Mercer kind of hit the nail on the head, summarised all the points quite well. In terms of accessing the site, we wouldn't have any involvement really in that, but I could speak to the agent and see what the process would be, but they definitely will be able to access the site, just like the other residential areas which have gates on. But no, in a word, I'm not too sure how they'll do it, but they'll either have a fob or some sort of mechanism to get in.
Chairman, Yes, I'm happy with that. We've just had a message up that from Charlie that we're approaching.
Yes, I've seen it. We've got 4 minutes left. Councillor Andy Mercer.
Chairman, could I suggest that we extend the meeting by...
Just wait a minute, please. I think if we get a proposal, we can get it through. Councillor Andy Mercer, have you a proposal, please?
I'd like to propose that we accept the planning application and grant it with the officer supplied conditions.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder for that?
Seconded.
Councillor Gillian Mercer seconds. All those in favour say aye.
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 All those against say nay. Any abstentions? Then that's carried. Thank you. Now we'll get to the point where we're coming up to 2 hours and we have a choice of extending the meeting for tonight, and you may look at your agenda and see we've got 3 applications left. The alternative is we again close the meeting for a present and then reappoint. We're looking at March the 17th as our next meeting, and we could possibly add anything left if we want to leave it tonight to that meeting.
Chairman,
so, yeah.
I have a proposal. I suggest that we carry on for a half an hour. We see how we get on with those, because the more we leave over this meeting, then the more likely is the next one will overrun, and quite a few people have.
Yeah, we understand that. So, do you guys want to carry on for half an hour?
Yes. Yes.
Anyone not? Then that's carried, so we'll carry on for half an hour. Thank you. Can I just please, Councillor Andy Mercer, read you a message that I've had from Paul Bland over who's going to sign off in the interim period, and it says, note on Councillor Andy Mercer's point, there will be an interim delegated sign-off arrangements in place 1st of April, most probably resting with Rob Harbour.
Thank you for that, Chair. I'm a little bit concerned, as I was at the meeting last Thursday of the Shadow Authority, where we approved the Constitution, including the interim arrangements, and I don't recall such a delegation being included.
Okay, so, well, that will come out. Let's carry on with this meeting, because we've got to get through it if we can. So we now move to Glapthorne again. Pete, is that yours again?
Yeah, sure is. I'll just
come on then. Let's have this one.
Yeah, sure. Right. Okay, so members will recall this one. This is the application was approved back in July 2020 for the change of use to an equestrian centre riding school. It had a stable block, hay barn, workers dwelling, outdoor arena, access parking, associated works. The site is just here, as you'll recall, in the countryside. This was the site plan that was approved by committee back in July. The stable block here is the element that we're looking at. This was the stable elevations as approved by committee, and these are the floor plans as approved. The current application proposes a larger stable block with an indoor all-weather arena. Here's the elevations. As you can see, it's larger to accommodate the arena, and the floor plans there. So yeah, this section 73 application seeks to vary condition 2. It essentially increases the height and size of the building. I think the ridge height now goes to 6.59 meters. Previously it was 3.89. In this instance, the variation of this condition to increase the stable block is not considered to cause enough harm to the environment, and there are benefits that outweigh this harm. In improving the equestrian centre in this location, that was the initial harm to the site. So in increasing this building's height, it's not going to tip the balance for us to recommend refusal. So the recommendation is one of approval, as per the officer report.
Okay, thank you, Peter. We have one speaker on this application, and that is Kerry Flieger. Have I said that right? Are you there, Kerry?
I think it's Flager.
Flager? I'm sure we'll hear. If Kerry's there, she'll tell us. Are you there, Kerry?
Can you press *6 on your phone? Thank you.
Are you there, Kerry?
She was. She's. Yeah, we can hear you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Kerry, make your speech now, please.
Okay, right. I'm speaking on behalf of the applicant, Katie Wilkinson, who has operated Blackthorn Manor Stables for over 33 years. Mrs Wilkinson is a tenant at her existing stable yard and associated house, and is required to start vacating the stables this spring following the granting of planning permission for residential development. Planning permission was granted by the committee in July last year for the relocation of the riding school to the application site, including 18 stables, a hay barn, outdoor arena and a temporary workers' dwelling. Permission is sought to vary the approved plans to provide a facility that meets evolving horse welfare best practice, including providing all stables under one roof, with half of the stables having access to a communal pen and all stables having metal grills rather than being separated by timber, reducing social isolation for the horses. An undercover area is also proposed to provide an all-year-round facility. The importance of an all-year-round facility has been highlighted with increasingly inclement weather. For example, no lessons were taught at all in February 2020, having a financial impact on the business, as well as a social impact on clients, particularly children with disabilities, who the relocated facility will provide bespoke facilities for. The facility will provide an equine-assisted therapy. Whilst the business has been heavily impacted by coronavirus, there was high demand for lessons following the first lockdown, and the same is expected this time as a result of people making their and their children's physical and mental well-being a greater priority. Over 60% more children were on the books in October 2020 than in October 2019, and the number of adults riding has doubled, and the applicant has a waiting list. The proposed variations will be wholly within the built-up area of the approved development, and due to levels across the site, the ridge height of the amended stable and arena building will continue to sit below the level of Benfield Road and the already permitted hay barn. The proposals are accompanied by a detailed landscaping scheme. The proposals are fully supported by officers, and there are 20 letters of support. In summary, the application seeks to vary an extant planning permission for the relocation of Blackthorn Manor Stables from its existing facility, which is not owned by the applicant. The proposals will enable improvements to be made to the proposed facility in terms of both horse welfare and client facilities, which can be incorporated into the initial build. The applicant has discharged the majority of pre-commencement conditions attached to the extant planning permission, and it is respectfully requested that planning permission is granted for the proposed variations to enable them to be incorporated into the build, which will be commencing imminently, to enable horses soon to be displaced from the existing rented facility to be rehomed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kerry. So that's the speaker on this application. We haven't got a ward member for this application area with us tonight, so I think Councillor Jill Mercer has agreed to take this one.
That's right, Chair. As you've heard, it's a much higher building. It's going up from 3.89 to 6.95 metres. I'm not quite sure whether if that was the original one that we would have granted. It is a bit like a creeping development, but the officers have assessed that the overall effect or the damage to this site is not great enough to turn this down. There is a lot of support for it, and it does seem to be better for the children and the parents. The outside area is changing as well to accommodate this, and the general idea is to have it more under one roof. There are no other consultees making any comments on it. It was mentioned about the local highway authority at 7.17 about all journeys would have to be cut by car, but that's nothing new in any rural location. There just aren't any buses, so it doesn't make any difference at all. So on balance, at 9.1, the officers laid out the conclusion and the planning balance that it wouldn't have a harmful impact on the area. So I'd just like to hear what my fellow colleagues say.
Thank you. Councillor Andy Mercer. Then Councillor Hughes. Andy?
Thank you, Chair. We talk about planning balance, and many of the applications that come to us are, in my opinion, finely balanced. That's why they end up at committee, because there is an element of judgment and trying to balance things. I don't think this one is one that's finely balanced. I think it's very, very clear that we should grant this one. It reminds me a little bit of the early applications for Rushton Lakes years ago, because it seems to have so much in its favour. It creates employment in a rural area, which we're always in favour of. It supports the local economy. It provides a service that is very, very desirable. It improves the health and well-being of the local community. It's got loads of support locally. The officers seem to fully support it. This is one where I think we've got an easy decision in front of us, and it's certainly refused.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hughes.
Yes, far be it for me to repeat what Councillor Andy Mercer has just said. I think this is a very good opportunity to have employment in the rural area, and particularly the work it does with disabled young people.
Okay, any other discussions before we go back for a proposal? No? Jill, can we have a proposal, please?
In that case, Chair, I would like to propose that we grant this application with the conditions outlined.
Is that a second, Councillor Hughes?
Yes.
So it's been proposed and seconded. We accept the officer advice. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
All those against say nay. Any abstentions? Then that's carried. Thank you very much. Next one, 01533, Nassington Road, Apethorpe. Jill, I think I asked if you could take this one as well.
That's right, Chair.
Just a second. We have...
Chairman, we have Wayne waiting.
Yes, I understand. Wayne, you're taking this one, are you?
Yes, I am. Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Chair.
Can you crack on? Well, I sort
no problem. Yeah,
the speakers out.
Okay, so essentially, can you see my presentation on the screen?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So this is essentially an application which relates to the change of use of some farm buildings to a wedding venue. A previous application for such a use was refused on highway grounds, but allowed on appeal. This application is to change various aspects of that scheme. There are some internal and external changes, including a projected roof to one side and an oak pergola to the rear. The application also proposes a ground source heat pump and changes to the car park layout. Originally, the application also proposed 2 access points to the car park, but one of these would have involved vehicles travelling along a bridleway.
Wayne, sorry, we can only see the front page of your.
Yeah, I was going to go through the presentation after to show the pictures afterwards to explain the points I'm making, if that's okay.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, yeah. So originally the application proposed 2 access points to the car park, but one of these would have involved vehicles travelling along a bridleway which passes in front of the buildings. Following concerns from users of that bridleway, that part of the application has been removed, and there's only one place to get into the car park, which I'll show you on a plan in a minute. There are still concerns from the local community on highway grounds, but these were not supported on appeal, and the levels of traffic remain the same as the last scheme. There are also amenity concerns about having a wedding venue in this location, but the principle of it has always been established by the existing planning permission. Overall advice is planning permission should be granted. At the briefing, Councillor Mercer raised the question about the access road into the site and the condition of it, and I'll just get to a photograph for that. Since the briefing, I've been and had a look at the site, and this is the entrance where the access road joins the public highway. And I reckon about the first 50 metres of it has been damaged recently. So what I'm suggesting is that the highway conditions in the report is expanded to say that the first 50 metres of the road should be repaired, all these holes that you can see on the photo, that the wording of the conditions in the update sheet. I'll just show a photo of it looking in the other direction. So you can see once you get past the 50 metres, the road isn't too bad going up to the buildings. So this, where you can see these 2 gates here, this will be the way into the car park. And when the application was originally submitted, the vehicles could also turn left and go along the front of the building, which is the bridleway, into a sort of a bit you can see at the bottom of the plan. And that's not part of the proposed anymore. That's just been taken out. So the only way into the car park will be the way that you can see at the top of that plan there. So essentially, based on all of that, plus the slightly amended condition in the light of Councillor Mercer's comments, my recommendation is the application is approved. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Wayne. Right, we've got 2 speakers here, I think, yes. The first is Mr. M. Stevens, who's the agent.
Chairman, it's Mr. Adkins first. Mr. P. Adkins, objector.
There is an objection, but he's second on that. He or she, he's second on my list.
No, Chairman, the objector should speak first, and then the applicant.
Okay,
so
fine.
It's Mr. Adkins first.
Right. Sorry about that, Mr. Adkins. We're going to move you up one. Can you speak first, please?
Adkins here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman.
Good evening.
I am resident at Shortwood Lodge, which has a clear sight line and a clear audio line onto the property in question. And my concerns really have to do with noise pollution and the enforceability of the guidelines that seem to have been a part of the original application with respect to maintaining some sort of acoustic barriers to that noise pollution. I live 900 meters from Bluefield Farm. We have sheep here, we have horses here, we have quite valuable horses which have competed at the Burley 3-day event and in fact have won the Burley 3-day event in 2007. It is highly suspect to me that the noise analysis that was conducted was really done with respect to what happens at night, where I think, well-being of the animals as well as the ability of the inhabitants. There's 5 people who are living on the property who take care of those animals with respect to getting a good night's sleep that could well be impaired if there are wedding ceremonies going on late into the night. It concerns me that a commercial enterprise, which would be designed to make sure people have a good time, is not going to be held accountable to the standards that you might see in your wisdom to pass with respect to this application. The acoustic tiles that are supposed to be put inside of the building I'm not sure what level of inspection will take place to ensure that they are of the appropriate standard and that they meet the appropriate specifications. But it concerns me that that could slip through the inspection process, and then we would be left with a situation where people largely from outside the community are being bussed in to have a good time in the middle of the countryside, and the incentive of the owners is simply to make sure that they have a good time to get their value for money, and then they leave when the party is over. And those of us who live in this area, who really cherish the fact that it is a pristine and very, very quiet rural environment, find ourselves beset by one group after another who have a complete disregard for our well-being. The last time there was a wedding there was a fireworks display that went on until 2 o'clock in the morning, which caused significant distress to the animals, including the dogs that are on the property. I note that that has been addressed in the application and that fireworks will not be allowed, but I don't really envision someone there telling people to calm down, quiet down, and not set off fireworks if they all decide to have a good time. And I don't really want to find myself in a situation where I'm at war with the people on this property, having to call the police or having to take injunctions.
Sorry to interrupt, Mr. Adkins, but your 3 minutes are up.
Okay.
And I have to be fairly firm.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
Thank you for the comments. Now we'll move to Mr. M. Stevens, who is the agent for the applicant.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Good evening. My name is Martin Stevens from Harris McCormack Architects. I'm the agent acting on behalf of the applicant. This application has been made in order to seek approval for a number of minor amendments to the existing permission granted at appeal in 2019. Although relatively minor in their own right, collectively these changes are deemed as excessive for a non-material amendment, and therefore a new full plan application has been submitted following advice and consideration from the local authority. These amendments include minor changes to the layout of the car park to help improve pedestrian safety and traffic movement, the addition of electric vehicle charge points, a dedicated area for servicing the building at the rear, 2 oak frame pergolas, one of which is already on the approved drawings, a roof canopy to the west elevation to provide shelter for the bridal party, minor alterations to the internal layout to improve function and operations, and finally a state-of-the-art ground source heat system. There have been a number of objections made against the submission, which, whilst we don't agree with some of these, we have considered them all, liaised with the planning officer and revised the scheme post-submission to address some of these concerns. One of them is the issue of increased traffic along the bridleway by proposing to open up the secondary access point at the west. This has since been removed and no longer forms part of the submission. Bridleway safety in general has been raised at consultation as these were at appeal, but we have taken steps in this submission to reduce risks beyond that of the approved drawings. The approval shows service bays opening up directly onto the bridleway, resulting in delivery vehicles and service vehicles turning and reversing into and out of the front of the building. We've removed these completely and redirected all service and delivery vehicles to the rear. The only traffic therefore crossing the bridleway is at the main entrance. Further concerns over noise and fireworks have been dealt with via the conditions on the approval, and further conditions suggested by the local authority proposed for this application. The applicant is fully on board with these conditions and committed to satisfying them, including, for example, the complete ban on fireworks and the use of air conditioning to limit noise pollution from potential open windows. Glazing specifications have been stipulated on the approval, and doors will be fitted with self-closing devices to further limit the risk of noise pollution. Items related to highways, noise, contamination, etc. are not affected as part of these proposed amendments. In reality, the changes presented here result in improvements to an already approved scheme. Despite this, we've worked closely with the necessary consultants and the local authority to make sure that the latest revisions meet with planning policy and are in line with the current approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, now we'll move to, again, we haven't got a ward member tonight. It's the same as before. Jill, I asked you to take this one. Can you do that?
Okay. So as you've heard, the wedding venue has been passed. It was passed on appeal. So a lot of the objections are on general that about a wedding venue. So we cannot count those. You've seen at 2.2 the amendments, and it's been mentioned earlier. It's been brought in to committee the request of the ward member. The bridleway has been explained that the second access is now no longer being used, so therefore the vehicles won't need to go across the front of the building and use that bridleway. The fireworks have been mentioned are not going to be allowed. The noise obviously is one thing that the speaker spoke about, so I'll come back to that in a minute and ask the officer for more clarification. As I said, most of the objections are on just general to do with the venue itself. There was the problem with the entrance, and as Wayne said, the update sheet says about restoring that area so that the potholes and things are repaired. So that has countered that problem. Yes, sorry, I'm just doing, yes, the same points, the removal of the second access. So it's good that the applicant has responded to those things like closing of the second access, and they are mindful of the residents. I'd just like to ask Wayne, just on the noise, if it's said about having not having windows open and having help with acoustics. Has do you feel that's been thoroughly pursued?
Yeah, I mean, all I'd like to say on noise, just noise condition 4 in the report is quite a comprehensive report. Environmental Protection have done quite a lot of work on it, and there's various things in there which we think are enforceable. They are things that can be checked if there was ever an issue with the site. There's some very clear things that they have to comply with in there.
Thank you, Wayne.
Thank you very much. That's all I have to say, and I will pass over to my colleagues to make any comments.
Councillor Hughes.
This is another example of someone trying to put the farm buildings into some use to make some money, because unfortunately they can't make money perhaps out of agriculture. They do seem to have bent over backwards to meet the people and the neighbours who are 900 metres away, and we didn't work, that's a long way away. But it seems to me that although there may be some disturbance, of course, because you do anything that's disturbance if you bring vehicles and so on, they won't be having a wedding every night, I wouldn't have thought. So therefore I really don't think there's reason to object to this, and it's nice to see they're putting in a heat pump and they're going to make it a better environment.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Andy Mercer.
Thank you, Chairman. This appears to be one of those applications where there's not much we can do, because we turned it down once before and it won on appeal. This is just a variation on that. I'm grateful for the proposed condition that the officer has put in the update sheet to deal with the access road. However, it specifies 50 metres. I've got a sneaking suspicion it's more like 60 or 70 metres that needs to be repaired, and I would suggest that we check just what section, just how far along the potholes run, because I've got a feeling that they're a bit more than 50 metres worth. That's the only comment I've got on this. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Any more comments, Wayne?
Yes, so all I wanted to say was I've been out and measured it, and I think it is about 50 metres. But we can put an increased distance on if you wish, if you want to be really on the safe side. But I think I was on the safe side with my 50 metres.
Well, I'd be happier if we made it 60.
Okay.
Thank
that's
you.
fine. Yeah.
Councillor Wilkes has a question.
It's Councillor Wilkes, isn't it? Yes. I can't see who it is from there. Councillor Wilkes.
Thank you, Chairman. Actually, my first question was going to be, is the 50 metres long enough? We've just covered it. My second question is, what standard does the road surfacing have to be to? I couldn't see that.
Yeah, and at the moment, underneath all that mud, there's a concrete road surface. So my suggestion is that the potholes are filled in with concrete to make a concrete road surface for that distance.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Right, any more comments? Therefore, Jill, can we have a motion, please?
Yes, I will propose that we grant this application with the conditions, and especially that extra condition about the road.
Thank you, Jill. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Hughes. Those in favour say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Those against say no. Those abstaining tell me. Then that's carried. Thank you very much. We're on to our half-an-hour extension just about, and we have one application at Earthlingborough to come, which has 4 speakers. Would you like to carry on and finish that one off tonight, or would you like to postpone it to the future meeting?
Chair, I'd propose we postpone this one because this is not going to be a quick one.
Okay, those in favour of postponing this application, say aye.
Chair, Councillor Wilkes, whose area it is would like to say something.
Chairman, could I just add, whilst I absolutely agree with Councillor Mercer, this is not going to be a necessarily quick one, not as fast as the last one. We have 4 speakers who have waited for 2.5 hours to speak on this, and they attended the last meeting and waited however many hours it was to speak. So I just say that members should consider that. We do have the public here that are taking time off and attending these. I don't think anybody thought we would get to this one. We should have told the speakers at the start, really.
Okay, well, we've still got the same choices. We've just got one suggestion to call it a day and one suggestion to delay it again. I appreciate the speakers have been around for a long time on 2 occasions, which is most unfortunate, but I'm afraid that's what we've got. So I'm going to have to ask you whether you want to carry on or whether you want to stay as you are.
Chairman, Councillor Hughes was indicating.
Carolyn? So who was?
It was me, and I was going to say with Councillor Wilkes, it's a bit unreasonable to keep these people waiting more time. After all, we are serving the people, and I think we should. Although I don't want to go ahead, I think we should.
I understand what the points are. Carolyn, do you want to make a point?
Yeah, I was just going to make a point to say that with your agreement, I could put the last item, if members do decide to defer, as the first item on the agenda for the 17th of March, if that would help.
Okay, so we need your opinion, so we have an actual committee decision. Those in favour of calling it a day now and putting this application through to the next meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those who want to carry on with this meeting until we finish the last one, say nay.
No.
Nay.
That could be either way, I suppose. So we'll have to do a round robin. Pardon?
I would have said that Lee's argument won there. There were only 2 people in favour of my proposal. He's had about 6.
Chairman, could I just ask, before we go on to this one, that we could have just a 5-minute comfort break?
I'd rather take a vote because we might be saying it's enough now. So I can't tell from the noise whether there was a strong answer one way or the other. So can we ask individual, if we're going to carry on, we'll have a comfort break, I understand. Can I ask each of you in turn whether you want to stop now or carry on? So what I have suggested that we could stop now and put the meeting on to the next one, the last application onto the next meeting. So if you're in favour of that, then tell me when I call your name. So Councillor Dudley Hughes.
No. I'm in favour of carrying on.
Councillor Bert Jackson.
No.
Barbara Jenny.
No.
Andy Mercer.
Yes.
Jill Mercer.
No.
Jeff Shatlock, are you still here?
I think Jeff left.
He's gone, he hasn't come back. Alex Smith.
No.
Peter Thomas.
No.
Robin Underwood.
Yes.
Peter Watson is not here, is he? And Lee Wilkes.
No.
So I don't think we need to count that too much. You obviously want to carry on and get the Earthlingborough one done, which is okay. As we've been asked to have a comfort break, then take 5 minutes. Is that enough?
Oh, yes.
5 minutes. It's now 9 o'clock, so 9:05. Let's be back on it, please.
Chairman, can I just ask while we're having
Sorry.
whilst we're having that comfort break, can we just make sure that the speakers are still on? If they've got bored and fallen asleep, then clearly that changes things. But can we just check?
At the moment, we've got three speakers joined. One of them didn't, so we've still got 3 speakers here.
Thank you.
Okay. 9:05 then. Make a cup of tea.
Yeah.
Dudley, you're not muted.
No, no. I thought we were starting again.
We are still live, Dudley.
Is everybody back? Andy, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I can hear you, Chairman.
Good, fine. So, if we're all back, can we reconvene?
Chairman, can I just confirm that Mr. Carville, who's the objector listed, isn't present, and I've tried to contact him and he's not answering his phone, so he's not available.
That's Mr. Carville. Yes, I've got you. Okay. So, right. We're on to the final application for tonight, which is the one in Earthford, last on the list. And sorry, Patrick, this is yours, isn't it?
It is, Chair. Yes.
Yes.
Right.
Introduce it then, please.
Presentation. Okay, hopefully you can now see.
Chairman.
Can you hang on, please, Patrick?
Yeah.
Who's speaking to me?
Chairman, Councillor Jenny would like to declare a late interest.
Sorry, Councillor who?
Jenny.
Can I declare, sorry, Chairman, can I declare that I'm known to Mr. John Sidey, who's speaking tonight?
Is that all?
Yeah.
I think we all know him. So that's okay, just carry on. So, sorry to interrupt, Patrick. Can you carry on, please?
Okay. We have an application here, a reference number in front of you on the screen, hopefully. It's an application for a single detached 3-bedroom dwelling. Members will be aware or may recall we dealt with a similar application last year, refused last July, also for a house. So this is in a way a resubmission of that scheme, which has been amended primarily in terms of where the access is. Just as a summary, in front of yourselves here. So the main point, I'll move on to the plans, but I won't go into too much detail because you'll all be familiar. We're on the corner site here. The previous application, the access was off Nursery Gardens. That application went to committee with a recommendation for approval. The members refused the application for 3 given reasons. This application has now been submitted proposing an access directly off College Street, partly as one of the main concerns at that point of members was the extra use of Nursery Gardens, which is a private road. As an aerial image in front of yourselves. So what we have, 28 College Street here, and then it's got land to its side. It had previously contained a garage, flat roof garage, and some garden space, but the main garden space of 28 is to its rear, to the north. So this land to the left or west of 28 College Street is where the house is proposed to be located. What we have in front of us now is the site plan from the application from last year, or refused last year. So as you can see, there is no access or no vehicular access, at least directly off College Street. It was proposed simply to add or to use existing access. The driveway which is already used by 28 and 2 other houses. And as we'll see here, the alteration compared to that scheme is to create a new access directly onto College Street, so no additional use of nursery gardens would occur. Instead, there would be a direct access served or serving solely the new dwelling, so which would run between the 2 houses, running to a parking and driveway turning area to the rear of the house. Its garden would be largely to the side of the house and partly to the rear. And 28 College Street, you can see the way the 2 properties would be divided in terms of 28 College Street continuing to use its garden directly behind it. As you can see, the gravel area shared by the various properties would be amended or altered to create that additional parking space for the new property. In terms of the actual design of the house itself, in terms of its form and scale and appearance, that is essentially the same as was proposed last year. It is adjusted ever so slightly to the west, but only a small amount. So in terms of the actual design of the house, it's essentially the same as the previous application. There's a couple of photos coming up. This is a view taken from Nursery Gardens into the existing gravel driveway, and the existing, well, behind the wall and behind the fence is the garden of number 28. That there is the side of number 28. These were taken probably last sort of spring, summer. Members may be aware that there's some details on the update sheet that I bring your attention to, because some concern has been raised by residents in terms of the wall has been removed that's in front of us. The update sort of clarifies that point in terms of the developer took that down due to concerns, and the council's building or a building control officer from the council went out and was also of the mind that it wasn't structurally sound. This is again another photo from that time when the garage was there to the rear of number 28. Another view from Nursery Gardens to the side. So the house evidently would be between where this photo is taken from and the side of 28. So it would be in that space that we are looking. This is a view from Nursery Gardens. Just to give a bit of context, you can see some of well, a bit of a glimpse of the houses on College Street. This was taken a bit more recently, sort of, I don't know, trying to remember, probably September, October last year, showing the site where in its relatively recent form, sort of following the partial demolition of the wall. But primarily, you know, the focus here is to give an idea of how the house would go on that site and how it relates to the surroundings, the adjacent property, and the broader conservation area. Just included here the access plan provided as part of the application, showing the visibility display from the access. It's noted that the local highway authority do not object to the application because the visibility displays provided meet their requirements. So in conclusion, this is essentially a copy of that previous slide. It is a similar proposal to that from last year, except with an altered access. The altered access is considered acceptable to the local highway authority, and it's deemed acceptable in all other respects, and the recommendation is for approval for the reasons set out or subject to conditions set out in the report in front of yourselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Right, we have, I think, now 3 speakers on the subject. The first one is Councillor Dorothy Maxwell. Councillor Maxwell, *6, please, and speak up. Dorothy, once again, we're waiting for you. Can you help us, Louise?
Yeah, I'm just going to try and contact her.
I think you ought to organise some training or something.
He's already had some training, Chairman.
No, it's gone to him. Oh, she's here now.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Very good. Thank you very much indeed. Right, I'm Dorothy Maxwell, and I'm speaking on behalf of the residents who live in Nursery Gardens and College Street. This application for a single 3-bedroom dwelling on the grounds of 28 College Street creates massive issues for the residents of 2 and 4 Nursery Gardens who live adjacent to 28 College Street and the residents who live in College Street. The house design submitted by Mr. Sadi is not intrinsically impressive. It does not give a true dimension of the build. It is completely different to 28 College Street, which has a double bay window. Earthling Borough Town Council has concerns about design and in fact overlooks 2 and 4 Nursery Gardens, which would leave them with no privacy and warrants very serious consideration. The exit from this development, which is now directly onto College Street next to 28, shows major issues. Knocking down a street light, removing it, will stop 3 cars parking along this road. The houses from 49 to 29, that's 11 houses, is a row of terrace houses, and they have no garages, therefore have little choice but to park opposite. Just how are they supposed to do this? Northamptonshire Highways commented on their report that the vehicular access serving the dwellings in Nursery Gardens must have a minimum of 4.5 for the first 10 metres from the highway boundary. This enables 2 opposing vehicles to park each other at the point of access. This proposal, additional dwelling, would lead to intensification of this road and footpath, with some sections of Nursery Garden only being 3 metres wide. What's changed? Nothing. This road from Nursery Garden is in fact increase more traffic due to 3 bungalows being built. This was not scheduled to happen in the original plan. This is only metres from 360 children at a primary school and junior school, a fire station. I observed how busy this entrance was with the traffic, parking, school children and fire station. I spoke to a driver who confirmed the difficulty he had in accessing College Street. Mr. Kennedy has just knocked down a 120-year-old wall. And this is what happened. What a surprise. As the planning committee, you need to observe this for yourself, not virtually, in order to fully appreciate the issues that these residents would face. Lastly, Mr. Kennedy has been informed he has to rebuild this 120-year-old wall. Who is going to ensure that this happens? Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Councillor. The next speaker is Councillor Caroline Cross, who's speaking on behalf of Earthling Town Council. Caroline?
Thank you, Doug. Thank you. So lovely to see that wall again just then. Really nice, really lovely. Planning permission, particularly in a conservation area, means asking for the authorisation to build, convert or extend. It does not mean, hey, you can't refuse me this. My proposal is going to fit nicely in this space because I've done all the preparatory work, demolished that old wall, flattened the outbuilding. I've even carved out the driveway. I've kindly removed all the obstacles so you can see what's what, just as I did before with the ancient barns. This would be akin to a teenager asking a figure of authority i.e. a parent, if he or she can go on a rave, and then saying, before you say no though, I'm on the train already, I'm nearly there. We, the residents of the town and custodians of our conservation area, feel disrespected and violated as a result of this developer's willful dismantling of our heritage. What is the point of a conservation area, and what is the purpose of a planning application when people like this know that they are not obliged to stick to the rules, and further that their acts of vandalism will be overlooked? What exactly is going on here? College Street is a primary road. It is an essential road. There's a fire station and a school on it. This willingness to grant by officers and assorted experts is based on theory alone. Theirs is an aerial picture, a diagram, a drawing, a plan of where this street meets that. As seen from a technical point of view, it's about angles and splays and measurements, lines of black and white on a perfect day. Such conclusions do not represent the everyday experiences of residents. They do not take into account the narrownesses on the road, stressed out drivers trying to find a parking space near their homes, fire engines on a sudden emergency call, young kids running out of the school gates. The driveway off College Street does conflict with the character of the conservation area and removes essential parking spaces. Further, this building site has for too long been visually damaging and upsetting. Pre-COVID, parents are taken to using nearby Scarborough Street as a drop-off point for their kids and are constantly reversing up and down to allow incoming and outgoing cars to drive in and out of their own double-parked street. The head of the junior school tells me that he is worried sick about those in his care. He is worried that a child will be knocked over. This new driveway will only add to the traffic chaos. It neither preserves nor enhances the conservation area. The house would be harmful and incongruous in the setting. Highway safety will be prejudiced. For these reasons, the application must be refused. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Caroline. And lastly, Mr. John Sidey, who is the agent for the application.
Good evening, Chair. Can you hear me?
Evening.
Good evening, Chair, and members of the committee. I'd like to start the evening by appealing to the committee to look at the merits of this proposal. The planning department has recommended for approval for a dwelling on this land on no less than 3 occasions. Initially, it was by way of a pre-app by the then owners of 28 College Street. The inquiry was made by the son of the then owners because the garden was too large for his parents to manage. The owner subsequently downsized and moved into one of the bungalows off Nursery Drive that the applicant had built. The previous submission involved access to the plot by Nursery Gardens, and now that was objected to and upheld on highway safety grounds. We're now not using Nursery Gardens at all, so there's no relevance to the comments made by Councillor Maxwell. The current application proposes the drive access off College Street in a similar vein to the other properties in this road. The access has been approved by the Highway Authority, as you've heard earlier. The case officer has made a thorough assessment of the application in terms of overlooking, overshadowing, etc. And there's been no material consideration, or is made no material consideration as to why the application should not be approved. The National Planning Policy Framework states that there be a presumption in favour of sustainable development, and it's clear from the scheme that the land is suitable to accommodate this dwelling. The land has limited amenity value and is not identified within any conservation area appraisal stating it provides important overviews or other amenity value. It is quite probable that this land was originally intended as a building plot along College Street, and that could have been purchased as a double width plot. I think it's important to state that there has been no work, or no work has taken place on this site apart from the clearing of the site, erection of fences, and making good the unsafe retaining wall structure. The local authority was informed before any of this work took place. Ramped access off College Street was created to enable this work to be carried out. The proposed represents a good design, very much in keeping with the street scene and adjoining properties. After construction, there would be a good visual break in the street scene where the access to Nursery Gardens occurs. It has a single height bay window in keeping with the majority of the street. The host dwelling admittedly has a double height bay. However, as we know, conservation areas are made up of dwellings and structures complementing in both scale and varying designs. The scheme is fully supported by the authority's conservation officer. Additional dwellings have been proven local and national need and consequently public benefit. Both the proposed and the host dwellings have good land to plot ratios with ample amenity space and off-road parking provision. In conclusion, as per the recommendation to approve, I hope the planning committee will see the merits of this scheme and not be influenced by other matters, in my opinion, of little relevance. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tidy. Right, those are the speakers. We'll now move back to the ward member, who I think, Councillor Lee Wilkes, this one's yours, isn't it?
Chairman, it is indeed. Thanks very much for that, and thanks to Patrick, to Mr. Reid, for yet another clear and concise presentation of this application. And thank you to the speakers. I know it's late. It's late for all of us, but it's good of those speakers to hold on. I'm glad they got their say. I do want to say thank you as well for clarifying to Mr. Reid, for clarifying the situation with regards to demolition of the heritage wall. So that is something we really shouldn't consider at the moment, because it has been explained why that wall was taken down. I would say, though, that if members are minded to approve this application this evening, that brick wall should be reinstated on a like-for-like basis using the same bricks and to the same height, because it clearly is an important part of the street scene. So, Chairman, having listened to everything that's been said so far this evening, I'm still finding it difficult to support the application. I don't necessarily agree with the final speaker. I think he was the agent for the applicant when he said that by creating a driveway to this property, it will mean that it matches the other properties in the road. Because, of course, the vast majority of properties along this road are old Victorian terraces with no parking, so they have to park on the road. I think it's one of the potential problems. So as we heard there were a number of objections to the application, including from Erthington Town Council, and they mentioned overdevelopment. They mentioned the aesthetic impact on the conservation area, and the loss of parking on College Street. And as they say, that is a road that has a large number of houses that have to park on the street. So the loss of those 2 or 3 or 4, depending on who I just listened to and what I've read, the loss of those parking spaces, I think, is going to be important. But, Chairman, I suppose the issue that I'm struggling most to overcome here is that this committee that I'm on now refused this application 3 months or so ago. I can't remember what it was, the end of last year. And we refused this application. And we refused it for 3 main big reasons. And 2 of those reasons haven't changed. It seems that they're still exactly the same for this application. So it still seems to be out of character for the area. And it still seems to be overdevelopment of the site, which are the 2 of the reasons, of course, that the Erthington Town Council have raised. But now we have the added problem, or I'm trying to get it straight in my head, we have the added problem that we've got a parking issue on College Street, because we're suddenly going to lose some parking spaces. So as I say, Chairman, it's really hard to see how this significantly improves the application that we've already refused. So can I just hand over back to you and to see what my fellow members have got to say on this before I make any type of proposal, please?
Yes, of course, Councillor. Councillor Andy Mercer, please.
Thank you, Chair. I've not done a site visit here, but I've done 3 or 4 site visits in nursery gardens over the last couple of years for other applications in the same road. And I'm puzzled because I remember this wall quite clearly, and I don't remember it being at all out of true. And yet after it's been half demolished, suddenly we discover it's quite seriously out of true. That is really strange. I find that very odd. That said, the application, as Councillor Wilkes has said, is not significantly different from before. I must admit that I wasn't convinced that we had strong enough reasons to object to it and refuse it last time, and I feel that, or I felt that there was a distinct possibility that if it had gone to appeal, we might have lost the appeal. But having said that, it's not. This is not an improvement on the previous one. Normally when something comes back, they've improved something and they've removed some of the reasons for discomfort about it. But this isn't an improvement.
Thank you, Andy. Councillor Hughes. You're muted again.
I'm being good and muted when you tell me, see. Well, I refer to page 217 and the two reasons for refusal. And if we are pushed to accept this thing, then I would want to know how the officers say it is not contrary to policy 8D and all the rest of it on the first one. It is not contrary to the Northamptonshire joint core strategy, because we have actual policy reasons to decide to refuse this, apart from the obvious ones of it's going to reduce the amount of parking, which perhaps is a real valid reason, but the inspector may not take that. But it does overdevelop the site, and it certainly is unacceptable. If we're going to have conservation areas, what's the point of having conservation areas when this is going to be not built in the conservation? And whatever's happened, I hope the enforcement officers will ensure the wall is replaced.
Thank you, Dudley. Patrick, would you like to answer those 2 points?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I mean, in terms of evidently the previous application was refused, but it was refused contrary to officer's recommendation. So when the application went to committee last July, that was with a recommendation for approval because it had been assessed, against all the relevant policies, including in terms of the design and the impact on conservation area. And that proposal was deemed to be acceptable and compliant with all the relevant policies, and it included an assessment and comments from the council's senior conservation officer who found it to be acceptable. Obviously, what the nature of the process was, of course, that members in the committee concluded differently, as they're entitled to do so. So in terms of the policies that are cited in the reasons for refusal in that application last year, in terms of design over development, the relationship of the property on the conservation area and so on, they are matters of judgment. They are not objective black or white matters. So that's ultimately what those matters come down to. So that's essentially where we are. We have the refused application from last year. This application has been submitted, but ultimately it is for members to assess this proposal and make their own decision based on its merits.
Patrick, thank you.
May I briefly come back, please, Chairman? Just to say that, does that mean the proposed building is not in conflict with these policies? It is not not against the National Planning Policy Framework 200/2019, and it is not contrary to the other policies. Either it is contrary to the policies or it isn't. I know it's a matter of judgment to some extent, but either it is in conflict with the historic nature of those houses, or it isn't.
Thank you, Dudley. You said that before. Can we move on to Councillor Jill Mercer, please?
Thank you, Chairman. I seem to have some funny bleeping. This is no different to the application we had before, apart from the access. I am concerned about the access, the new access and the loss of parking, but as usual with anything to do with highways, we're told you can't subject to it on highways grounds if the local highway authority haven't backed that. But the other two reasons are that nothing has changed. The design has not changed. So if we grant this now, we are saying that we were wrong with those other two reasons. We are accepting that reason 1 and reason 2 from before were incorrect because nothing has changed. I cannot see how we can justify that on the basis that we turned it down before, when the only thing that has changed is the access.
Thank you, Jill. Understand. Carolyn, you want to come in on this, do you?
No, Chair, nothing from me.
Chair, I think Harriet. That's Harriet. Oh, and Andy. Sorry.
I was in front of Harriet.
And Andy was first. Harriet. Sorry.
Harriet, sorry. You want to come in?
It was Andy first, actually.
Andy first.
I've got a simple question. Does the applicant need to get conservation area consent in order to demolish something or remove something in a conservation area? I thought that was a separate consent that was necessary.
Patrick?
I'm trying to recall now. I'm not certain I have a concrete answer. From memory, I don't believe so. Other officers may be able to back me up here, but I think it may be that some demolition of buildings or structures within the conservation area require planning permission. From memory, though, conservation area consent has been removed, but it's quite rare, so someone else might be able to assist.
Yeah, I can just back up what Paddy said, that you can't apply for conservation area consent anymore. It's covered by the planning permission.
Okay. Thank you. Is that everybody? Have we all said enough?
Harriet now.
Harriet.
Thank you. I wanted to say that I concur with the thoughts of Councillor Mercer, that if we're going to be consistent in our decisions on these applications, if we refused it last time and nothing's changed, that's probably what we should do this time, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you, Harriet. You're on the phone, are you, Harriet? Not with us. Gone. Never mind. So, I think we must go back to Councillor Lee Wilkes for a proposal.
Okay, thank you, Chairman, and clearly thank you to my fellow councillors for their thoughts and comments. Unfortunately, I didn't hear anything there that satisfied my concerns. And as Councillor Jill Mercer said, I can't think of anything really that leads me to believe that the decision that we made before to refuse the application last time it came to committee has changed. So, Chairman, I have to, because it's there are no reasons not to. I have to propose that we refuse this application for the reasons stated last time, which namely were that the proposed dwelling.
Can someone please identify what exactly they were? Because we ought to have that now again, whatever your refusal.
I can do that, Chairman, if you if that would help. The two reasons are that the proposed dwelling represents an overdevelopment of the site, which would be detrimental to the character and appearance of the area. I'm reading these off the ENC's website that I've just logged onto. And point 2 was that the proposed development is unacceptable as it would have a less than substantial impact on the Earthenborough conservation area. Both of those points go on to quote the particular policies.
Those are your reasons for refusal. Does anyone have any more reasons?
Chairman, actually, just I hadn't quite finished. Can I just?
Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just ask the officer? I am also really concerned about the loss of parking spaces on this road where the residents, the neighbours, have to park. Can I ask officers? Is that a third reason for refusal? Would that hold?
I'm of the view that it wouldn't. I think in the report there's a paragraph or two which discusses that point, because we have been mindful of that particular point and the relatively sort of busy nature of College Street and the potential loss of on-street parking spaces. But there's a difference. What we deemed was ultimately there's a difference between what might occur in terms of potential loss of a couple of parking spaces on street, and whether on-street parking spaces represent a material reason to refuse an application. Ultimately, we considered it's not. Ultimately, of course, this decision is for yourselves to decide, and you may decide differently.
Okay,
thank you, Patrick. So you've got your two reasons, Lee.
Yeah. Well, if members would support, then I'd like to add the third reason, that I'm concerned about the loss of parking. But in either case, yes, I propose that we refuse this for those reasons given. Thank you, Chairman.
So that's your proposal, and those are your reasons. Can I have someone to second that?
Yes.
Sorry, Chairman.
Carolyn, do you want to come in?
Yeah, Chair, can I just confirm that members wish to delegate that to Head of Planning Services in consultation with Chair, Vice Chair and the relevant ward member?
Sorry, delegate what, Carolyn?
The reasons for refusal, because it's against officer recommendation.
The actual words of the reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly before.
I think that's a good idea. Thank you.
Sorry, Chairman. Carolyn, I'm happy for you to come back to me on this point, but do you want clarification as to whether or not the loss of parking is the reason that they're voting on, or it isn't a reason, or is that what you're delegating for the planning team to consider?
Yeah, if members could confirm if that's what they're voting on, but I was more about the wording of the refusal reasons once committee's finished before we issue the decision.
Well, yeah, let's have the three reasons then.
Chairman.
And you give us the wording, Carolyn.
Chairman, can I suggest that the first two reasons are adequately set out on page 217, exactly as they were for the previous. The only thing under question is the third reason and the wording for that. So I would suggest that the first two reasons can stand as they were.
Exactly.
So you don't want them to go. You don't want to delegate. You don't want to delegate that.
There's no need to delegate those, but the third reason, yes.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Have you got that, Carolyn and Patrick? You understand that?
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
And Chairman, that is my proposal.
That's the proposal. Can I have a seconder for that proposal, please?
Happy to second it.
Is that you, Dudley? Thank you. That's seconded. So we're now going to take a vote on the proposal to refuse this application on the 2 or 3 grounds that we have been discussing. Those in favour of the proposal.
With the proviso that the third reason is to be delegated for the precise wording to the chair, vice chair, and ward member.
And the ward member, yeah. Thank you. That's correct. So, on that basis, can we have an agreement from you all whether you would agree with that proposal or not? So, those in favour of that proposal for refusal, say aye.
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 Those who are against that proposal, say no. Any abstentions?
Yes.
One. Councillor Jackson is an abstender. So that's carried. So that's that one done. And in fact, that's the whole meeting, and it's only 9:45. So we have the next meeting on the 17th of March. And there might be 1 or 2 other after that, who knows? So you can dispense with those papers. You don't need to keep those papers for another time. Thank you very much for all your involvement, and have a safe journey home.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thanks, Chairman.